Good evening. I'd like to bring this meeting of the Planning and Development Committee of Tuesday, February the 1st to order. First item is attendance. I believe, Alicia, that you have a complete council this evening here.
I do, Chairman Bell. Councillor Miller is just joining now.
Thank you very much. Moving then on to the approval of the agenda. Would somebody like to move the agenda? Thank you, David. Seconded by John Pierce. Would anybody like to add anything to the agenda? Bearing in mind it's a fairly full agenda already. Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All those in favour?
Hello?
Yeah. I'm just making
Yeah, I'm in.
Alicia, there's a bit of background noise there.
I'm trying, Mr. Chairman. I've got to go through 4 screens, so I will find them.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, item 3, declaration of pecuniary interests. If anybody has a pecuniary interest, if they could let me know at the appropriate time. We have no delegations, petitions or presentations at this point, although we do have a lot of delegations and presentations later in the agenda. That moves us right along to the adoption of the minutes from the last meeting. The last meeting was on January the 4th, 2022. Would somebody like to move those minutes to get them on the floor? Thank you, Steve. Seconded by Brian. All those in favour? Thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, then we'll move on to item 7, which are public hearings under the Planning Act to receive information from the public. And we'll begin with item ZBA 3721. And Ryan Cummings will present the story for 19 Beverly Street. Over to you, Ryan.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just allow me to pull my presentation up. I hope you can see that okay.
Can indeed.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is in relation to 19 Beverly Street. The subject lands are located on the north side of Beverly Street West, east of Snowball Street in St. George. The subject lands are approximately 0.16 hectares or 0.39 acres in size. Have a frontage of approximately 37 meters on Beverly Street West and 55.5 meters on Snowball Street. Subject lands are surrounded primarily by low-density residential uses to the north, south, and west, and a county-owned water and wastewater stations to the east. Currently, the subject lands contain a 4-pump gas station and associated convenience store, as well as a non-operational drive-through. The applicant is proposing to amend the current zoning of the site from core area commercial C4 to special exception core area commercial to permit the redevelopment of the site to include a modern drive-through facility. The subject lands were developed through a site plan control application in 2001, which at that time had contemplated a drive-through restaurant as shown on the original site plan here. County staff have confirmed that a drive-through restaurant, while not currently permitted within the core area commercial C4 zone, is considered legal non-conforming use on this site, as the site was originally developed with a drive-through lane, order board and pickup window. The applicant is seeking relief from several provisions under section 4.8, which is specific to drive-throughs from the zoning bylaw, including reduction in the minimum setback from the last stacking space to the site entrance, and reduction in the minimum separation between drive-through stacking lane and the order box from neighboring residential uses. Applicants also seeking relief from section 5 of the zoning bylaw to permit a reduced number of parking spaces for the gas bar and drive-through restaurant. County planning and engineering staff have been working through the review of this proposal for some time now. We have some preliminary concerns with the proposed entrance off Beverly Street West. In particular, the concern is in the instance of overflow drive-through queuing into the Beverly Street corridor, which would pose significant concerns, especially during peak traffic hours in the morning and early evenings. The county's preference has and continues to be for the entrance and exits related to the drive-through to be routed off of Snowball Street so as to minimize conflict with the main traffic road through St. George of Beverly Street. To this end, county staff continue to work with the applicant to try and find a solution which meets both the needs of this business and as well as to make sure that the county's engineering standards are being met. The next steps for this application would be to receive comments from internal and external agencies through the formal circulation, as well as any comments, questions, concerns from council and or members of the public this evening. We're going to be working with the applicant going forward to make sure that this site works. It's difficult. I'll state that it's a retrofit of an existing site rather than a new build, and it certainly creates some conflicts when the building is going to remain in the middle of the site, and we have to work the drive-through around it. And so there's a good chance next time we see it, it might look a little different, but for that, we just wanted to get it out there tonight for discussion. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. If you can bring us back to the full screen. Thank you. Committee, questions to Ryan? Seeing none, thank you, Ryan. It's obviously very clear, and we'd like to move then on to the applicant or the agent of the applicant, if they would like to speak, if they could introduce themselves, give us their name and address.
Yes, it's Gary Smith from GL Smith Plan Design. My address is 4711 Yonge Street, North York, Ontario. We're representing the Global Fuels. We're the design firm that's working on this. I do have some drawings I wanted to just go over and sort of explain why we've taken the direction that we have and why we feel it is the better direction. Of course, we're willing to work with the planning department to make it come to a solution that everybody feels is best. But at the moment, we feel this is the best reason, best layout, or at least the start of the best layout. So if I can share my screen, I was just going to go through a few drawings and a few pictures. Is that all right?
Yeah, I think you've got the ability to share directly, Gary.
Yes. Okay. So I'll just share my screen. There. Can you see it?
We can, thank you.
Okay, so there's the original site plan that was shown to you earlier. We've just put some cars on it to show it. That drive-through was approved back in 2001. It's used inconsistently, but it's used some. The new owners that were originally the original owners that developed this site have repurchased this site and want to fix it up and make it better and improve it. And one of the things is bringing a food partner in, which was originally the plan for this, and create the drive-through. What we wanted to do was, yes, there's a drive-through there and we could have just used that, but we wanted to improve the site. And the needs for the drive-through in 2001 and now are quite different. So the owner wants to do this right. So we're not trying to take any shortcuts. We're definitely trying to do it the right way and upgrade it for the customers and, you know, for everybody in the area. So that is why we had this drive-through, and rather than just using it like that, we came with a proposal to move on. So this is just a site plan, like a visual of the Google Earth, so you can see it. Here is the site as it is right now. So it's a very nice site. It's very clean. The building still looks really great. We're not changing the building. We're only proposing, the only thing we're proposing to do is improve the drive-through. So you can see the traffic coming in and out. And here's where we have Snowball and we have Beverly over there. So this is where the cars are coming and going at the moment. So it shows you, just I wanted to show some photos of the site. This is where the existing drive-through comes through right now. And it's principally the same area we're proposing, except we're moving it over because we want to create a proper garbage area and a way for the traffic to go around. So here's just some pictures of the site, probably a few too many. But in case anybody wants to look at a certain area, there's a drive-through window. We're principally putting it in the same place as it was. So we're making very little changes, except when I say that, a major change to the how the drive-through goes. A couple of things in the last meeting that we had with the planning department was that we were short on some parking. So we have added some 2 parking spots over here. We have shortened the amount of the stacking of the cars. So we're not coming past the property line. We do show 9 cars, so it gives you an idea of what it is, what it will be, before, when it's coming up here. But if you come all the way across to the entrance, you get 12 to 13 cars, 12 cars to about this area here. I really don't believe this site, and I work on a lot of QSR and I work on a lot of petroleum sites. So QSR type of stores that would be going in here, my company does about 150 to 200 of those a year. Petroleum, we work on maybe 50 sites a year. So we are experienced on how these sites do work. It's not, we're just not throwing a dart at it and saying, we hope this is going to work. What we're trying to do, this is not an extremely big, busy site. It sells right now about 4.1 million liters of fuel, which is okay for this the site of where it is. It's nice for this size site, but it's not a busy site like you'll see some sites. We don't expect the draw in the drive-through to be extreme. Now, that being said, 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm sure there's more cars lined up there, but there is a fair amount of stacking this way. We did try and visit changing the drive-through and working off the snowball, and we can revisit that again. But we found that most of the stacking, the drive-through, the trucking, all didn't work as well. We didn't put it off of Beverly Street because we wanted it for the business-wise. We wanted it for the site operation-wise. We also did the trucking turning radius showing the deliveries. It will be planned that when deliveries of fuel are being brought to the site, that the drive-through closes at that time. It's very easy to organize that. It's done on many other sites. It's not totally ideal because you have to close down the drive-through, but it is done in other areas. It's not like this isn't done. So we have the trucks exiting, filling up the fuel, and then exiting through the drive-through. And we have some rollover curbs to help that function. For the garbage, we also show the trucks turning radiuses and coming in, and we show how the truck can come off of Beverly or Snowball and work with the garbage. One of the ideas, we can move the garbage to the other side of the building and have the trucks come off of Snowball on the backside. So that is maybe something we can look at. So there's a little bit less action going off of Beverly Street. But when I come back to the drive-through, the main reason the drive-through is proposed this way is not for any reasons except we believe this is the best way that site will work.
When they
We're
start
open to some other areas. We are definitely having some rules from the 4.8 where, our speaker box is closer, we're closer to the property line, but we're hoping these can be looked at because we are working with an existing building, existing canopy, existing fuel tanks, and we're trying to make this as good an operation as possible. It's honestly just to make the site better. It will help the business because right now fuel stations, it's gonna be hard when I say this with the price we're paying for fuel today, but the fuel isn't the profit part of it. They need the C-store, they need the branded partner in there for these businesses really to make money. Also is the way the public is, they don't want to stop for fuel unless they're going to solve another need. Everybody likes to multitask. So the reason why people always fill up is where there's either a place they can pick up their coffee and pick up their convenience. So that's how come this has become such an important part of the business. In 2001, it wasn't as important.
Because they can do that.
So we're open to any suggestions how to improve it, but we would like to get this started as soon as possible because we have a very small window being it in Toronto and Ontario for construction. And so we're hoping to build it this summer when there's no snow on the ground. and we have to get through the approvals and that. So principally, we found that we had to go for the site plan approval when we submitted for a permit for the renovation, and we thought this would be a minor variance, if anything, because we were just changing the drive-through. I understand why it's more, but I'm hoping we can work together to find a way to make this work, mainly for the customer that is very, very committed to the site. He was involved, the president of Global Fuels was involved in the first development of this in 2001. And then they repurchased this back, and now they want to make it great again. So it is a person that's quite passionate about the site, not somebody who's just trying to get away with things. We are trying to make this right. I think that's all I really have to say. I can answer any questions.
Gary, thank you very much. If you could return us to the full screen, please.
Oh, yes, okay. How do I do that? Oh, here, sorry. Stop share. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Committee, do we have any questions for Gary? Councillor Pierce first, then Councillor Ferrier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Gary, just a quick question. So when the truck is in there refueling, do I take it that they would have to exit in behind the building out to Snowball? Is that how it would work?
Correct, yes, they take a drive-through, drive-through, and they have rollover curbs. So they're sort of showing where the cars are going, but the truck has rollover curbs so they can go around that, where you see the pop up from the ground.
Thank you.
We have done a truck, a company that does the truck, their turning radiuses, and make sure it works.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to the presenter. I come from a gas station family, worked at gas stations for 10 years, and I'm just wondering when the dips are happening, will that stop based on the plan I'm looking at when they're doing the dips 2 or 3 times a day to check the fuel levels in the big tanks? Will they be stopping the drive-through in order to do that based on how it's set up in your proposal?
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the dips, but yes, but I mean, I worked in a gas station, and now that, since I'm quite old, that was probably about 50 years ago, and I used to do the dips.
Yeah, same. I guess I'm quite old too.
So I did do that. That was my summer job when I was going to design school. But yes, at the moment, I have to check where the panels are and where the dip is, but very likely the drive-through would be stopped at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Gary? Seeing none, thanks, Gary. If you just hang around, there may be questions which come out as a consequence of the public input. I'll now open this meeting to the public. Bearing in mind this is an information session, we're not making decisions tonight. Alicia, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
We do not have anyone for this item, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. If there's anybody online that wishes to speak, if they could speak up now. I'll ask a second time if anybody would like to speak.
Yes. Hi, good evening. Raymond Archer.
Thank you, Raymond. Could you give us your full name and address, please?
Yes, it's Raymond Brian Archer, and I live at 8 Beverly Street East in St. George.
Go ahead, please, Ray.
Yeah, just curious with the assessment for the potential rezoning or replanning of that Esso station for the drive-through. What I know that that I believe Gary had mentioned that there were the room for about 12 cars. What I'm curious to know though is what is the anticipated volume of usage for that drive-through if it was to go through. And again, the reason I'm raising that is the concern about the traffic on Beverly Street as it is, and living 2 houses down from Main and Beverly. As we all know, it's being really technically Highway 5. It's a very, very busy road and then highway. And so my concern is, with the number of cars and trucks going along there, putting in a drive-through that could potentially obviously increase volume of activity within that location from a retail perspective. Again, just wanting to sort of assess what that potential volume might be and what that might mean in terms of just, again, challenges around infrastructure with that particular street, because it is quite busy.
Thank you. I'll get Gary to answer that question if he can, but does committee have any questions for clarification from Raymond? Seeing none, thank you, Raymond. Let Gary, if you could answer that question from Raymond.
Yes, we did do a traffic study, and they pretty much said that this should be fine. I believe they did what they do is they take what the normal this size food partner would be, and even taking in the worst case scenario, we'll say a Tim's, and put the numbers of the cars that would be happening at that time, the stacking that we had, and the area that I was in, and they put in the report that that it would be fine. And we do have a traffic report that says that.
Raymond, is that okay for you? Sufficient answer?
No.
Well, I mean, I guess what I'm sort of curious to know is to me, obviously, I think that traffic will increase. And so from my perspective, I mean, okay, it's great they've done the traffic studies, but maybe this is also not just to Gary, but also to the council is, I have been living here for 2 years, and when I bought the house, I was certainly aware that it would be a busy street. I'm living on a major thoroughfare through the village. But at the same time, too, I have contacted Brant County previously and also the OPP, not only about traffic, but also speeds as well.
Mhm.
Speeds is really a different issue. But again, I just think that, and hopefully, I mean, most of the traffic will just be obviously local residents of St. George using that drive-through versus going up to 24 for the Tim Hortons up there. But again, just I'm a little bit surprised, I guess, in essence, that it would be sort of just normal and that there wasn't really an issue with the traffic assessment. But, again, I say that anecdotally, and, perhaps I'm just sort of curious to see what council thinks. And, I'm not disputing Gary's, assessment, but I'm just curious to see what council might think.
Raymond, we'll make sure that when this matter comes back for a decision, we'll make sure that answer is clearer. Thank you. Is there somebody else that would like to speak? I saw somebody come onto screen. No? Okay.
Sorry, yes. Kate Broussard from 256 McLean School Road.
Are you here to speak to the matter of the 8 Beverly Street?
I'm here for another matter, but may I say something anyway?
Yes, as long as it's on point.
Yes, it's to do with the school safety zone for the drive-through during certain periods of time of the day when students are on foot getting to school with strollers, etc., and also during nutrition breaks when there will definitely be older students leaving on foot to go purchase items from this drive-through or store inside. I'm just wondering if the safety of the students and the families has been considered.
We will certainly ask that the agent and the applicants consider that as we move forward into the decision for this. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this? I've asked twice, now I'll ask a third time. Seeing none, and I'll close the public part of this for this item and hand the matter back to committee to ask them what they would like to do with this matter. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to receive.
And seconded by Councillor Pearce. Any comments on that? Seeing none, let's call the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you. This matter will be brought back in a few months' time after staff have taken account of the input. Thank you to Kate and thank you to Raymond for their inputs, and thank you to the applicant. Moving right along then, the next item, 7.2, is in regard of 283 McLean School Road, ZBA 222, and Kayla, you are leading us on this one.
Chair Bell, I just would like to confirm you can see my screen.
We can, thank you.
Great. Good evening, committee and members of the public. Planning staff have received a zoning bylaw amendment application for lands located at 283 McLean School Road. The application has been submitted by Paul Riley of IBI Group on behalf of the owner of the lands, Hugh McNeil. The purpose of tonight's presentation is for information purposes only. It should be noted that public notices were sent out and the file did have some errors, which staff note will be corrected when future notices for the statutory public meeting are sent out. The subject lands are located just east of the Brant Road and McLean School Road intersection. The subject property has a frontage along McLean School Road of approximately 660 meters and an area of approximately 76 hectares. The subject lands consist mostly of open fields, and structures on the property include a single detached dwelling, barn, and garage. The zoning bylaw amendment application has been submitted to rezone a portion of the property to rural residential in order to facilitate the creation of 3 new residential lots. The application also seeks to recognize slightly deficient lot frontage and lot area for Lot 2 and for Lot 3. The subject lands to the rezoning are designated as rural residential in the official plan, as well as a portion of natural heritage. The zoning of the subject lands are currently zoned as agricultural and natural heritage. So the proposal that you can see on our slide currently, the applicants have shown the approximate development envelope and lot configuration. Consideration to natural heritage and cultural heritage will be evaluated in planning staff's review of this application. And as noted earlier, the applicant is seeking site-specific zoning for slightly reduced lot area and lot frontage for Lots 2 and for Lot 3. Staff have circulated the application for comments and will continue to work with the agent on addressing any comments of concern. The application will be brought back at a later date for recommendation. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Kayla. If you could bring us back to full screen. Committee, questions for Kayla? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kayla. I guess it's on page 36 of our package. I guess it's a letter from a resident, and they're talking about, it's about halfway down in the paragraph, and it states, in reviewing the chart, it must be noted that the IBI planning justification brief chart and the County of Brant notice of application severance schedule are not consistent in their documentation calculation in respects to the size of the planned severed lots. And in that paragraph, it notes that the lot 1 is recorded by IBI as 12,500 square meters, whereas the County of Brant records has the same lot at 5,271 meters. 2 questions, I guess. A, is that a correct statement? And B, is that what you were speaking of earlier there, Kayla, when you were saying that there was some inconsistencies?
For the chair, to Councillor Pearce, yes, that is correct. There were some inconsistencies, so we have been able to clarify, and I can provide that information for you. We did receive a new updated planning justification from IBI Group, which now represents the accurate numbers in terms of lot size and lot area. So lot 1 proposed is 5,721 square meters.
Okay.
Lot 2 and Lot 3 are the deficient lot sizes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Kayla. Kayla, the depth of those 3 proposed lots, do they extend to the limits of the rural residential designation in the official plan? I couldn't tell. It's just a brown strip on the one map.
My understanding that the lot configuration does follow the rural residential designation.
Okay, so they would just front on the roads and there wouldn't be enough behind them to create more lots. That's what I was getting at.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kayla from committee? Seeing none, I'll move along. Thank you, Kayla. I'll move along to the applicant or the agent of the applicant. Who is representing the applicant tonight?
Hello, committee. My name is Paul Riley. I'm representing the applicant tonight.
Thank you. If you could give us the name of your company as well, Paul.
I'm with IBI Group.
Thank you, Paul. Go ahead, please.
I'm going to share my screen here. Can everyone see this?
We can, thank you.
Yes, so I'm here to in support of Mr. Hugh McNeil's application as outlined by Kayla. This is for a zoning bylaw amendment and severance application at 283 McLean School Road in near St. George. As you can see, there's the subject lands just east of Brant Road on the north side of McLean School Road. And this shows the development lands, proposed development lands. So it'd be just west of the existing dwelling and accessory buildings. This is a diagram from the Brant official plan showing the rural residential designation. Single detached residential dwellings are permitted use in the rural residential designation. And this is the County of Brant zoning bylaw schedule. And you can see this notes the area in the schedule that would be amended. This is currently agriculturally zoned, and the proposed residential use would require the severed lands being rezoned to rural residential. And with this rezoning, all the regulations will be met. This is a topographic survey of the portion of the site for the proposed development. We've utilized these topographic surveys to design where the building envelopes would go. This is an image of the subject lands where the proposed lots would be located. This is an existing open landscaped meadow. We've provided a detailed environmental impact study evaluating the natural heritage features in relation to the proposed development. You can see there's a woodlands that are kind of along the property line and may encroach approximately 2 meters into the proposed lot 1. We've accounted for these natural heritage features with the design of the site in coordination with Natural Resources Solutions Incorporated, who prepared the EIS. And this shows the 3 lots. The retained lands would be approximately 75 hectares. Severed lot 1 is approximately 0.5 hectares. And severed lot 2 and lot 3 are approximately 0.4 hectares, but they're slightly under 4,000 square meters. The frontage, the topography at the road for lot 1 was a constraint that required a slight deviation in the proposed lot line between lot 1 and lot 2. And that's the reason for the reduced lot frontages. This is another image of the area that's right here, which is a 22-meter setback from the vegetation zone. As you can see, topography of the site and the scene manicured open space nature of the lands would lend itself to development in this building envelope zone, which has been coordinated with Natural Resources Solutions, Inc. and in consultation with the county staff and the Grand River Conservation Authority. The development constraints were the natural heritage features, driveway access, and also MDS calculations. We provided a MDS report with the submission, showing that there's residential use is appropriate for the location. So the applications are consistent with the Planning Act and the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, conforms to the growth plan designation of policies, conforms to a range of applicable designations and policies in the county rent official plan. The intent of the zoning bylaw is preserved with the rural residential rezoning of the severed lands. The rural residential character of the surrounding neighborhood will be maintained, and the natural heritage features on the site will not be impacted. Thank you.
Paul, thank you. If you could return us to the full screen, please. Thank you. Does committee have any questions of Paul? Brian, go ahead.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the applicant agents, is there 3 driveways or is there a shared driveway on 2 of the lots?
Paul, you must be muted. I can't hear you. Paul, you're muted.
Oh, my apologies. Never fails. There was discussion about a shared driveway between lot 1 and lot 2, but as you can see, we've kind of deviated the lot line to accommodate a driveway for lot 1, a private driveway for lot 1. That is a safe access point. The road kind of dips just past where this driveway would be accommodated.
Is that okay, Brian? David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 to Paul. Paul, just if you guys went for 2 lots instead of 3, you wouldn't need to apply for any of these exceptions as far as insufficient lot sizes or insufficient frontage. Is that correct?
You could say that's correct. I know that lot areas are should be limited in kind of agricultural areas. So there's enough room to fit these 3 lots. There's the reduced lot frontage is just several meters. There's still over 35 or around 35 meters of frontage on lot 3. The lot area is just about 100 meters squared less than the 4,000 square meters for the rural residential zone. Now there's also a tree line which runs along the proposed lot line between lots 3 and the retained lands. So the owner's hoping that that would be a good delineation and buffer between the proposed lot 3 and the retained farmlands and the farm dwelling that exists there.
Just a follow-up question there, Mr. Chair. One of your slides, you showed the lots didn't quite go to the end of the rural residential designation in the official plan. Is that accurate, or does it go back? Because I asked the planner, she said it does, but then you showed in one of your slides that it didn't.
I was basing that on the locations of the ponds and the existing dwelling. I believe that's kind of the extent of the development on what I've shown there. I don't believe it goes all the way back to the end of the rural residential designation. Yes.
Okay. And if, I'm just, again, I'm going back to, if you did extend it back, you'd be able to get around that insufficient lot size, but I'll leave it at that. Kayla can look at it later. Thank you.
Joan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It appeared in the one slide, though, that the rear of the properties are under GRCA jurisdiction. Is that correct? And 2 lots or 3 lots, you still need a zone change to go from agriculture to rural residential, correct?
Correct on your last point, yes. There's a shall I bring up maybe I'll bring it up again. Was it, guessing it's this slide of the proposed lots. So there's one of the elevation lines, which is in bold here, is kind of the edge of the floodplain. You can see that we've accounted for that with this slight deviation to the protection zone. It's above the flood line.
Is that okay for you, Joan?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can return us back to the full screen, please, Paul. Any other questions to Paul? Seeing none, thank you, Paul. If you could just hang around, there may be questions which come out of the public input. I'll now open this session to the public. Is there anybody that would like to speak? Alicia, who do we have on the line, if anybody?
Individual, a Barbara Baumgart.
Barbara, are you online?
Here with me. Yes, I am.
Barbara, if you could give us your full name and address, please.
It's Barbara Baumgart, Baumgart, and I live at 282 McLean School Road.
Okay. Barbara, go ahead.
Okay. I suppose my my biggest thing is you're going to put you're proposing 3 residential lots in that area. So what is that going to do with 3 septic systems and 3 wells going in? Plus, just recently, it was passed just down the road that we have an additional 2 lots that are being severed. So now we have a total of 5 septic systems and 5 wells. How's that going to affect, I'll say, the hydro, like the water table?
Yeah, thank you. Do you have any other questions, Barbara?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'll come back with the answer, or to get the agent to answer that question, but is there anybody else that wants to speak first? Alicia, anybody else? Oh, I see somebody.
Yes, there is a Heather Russell who's registered.
Thank you. Heather, would you like to give us your name and address, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Heather Russell. I'm an owner of 293 McLean School Road, which is located directly on the west side of the subject lands.
Thank you. Go ahead, Heather.
My presentation tonight is a summary of the document that I have already submitted. The first area that I'd like to touch upon is the zoning. The planning justification brief is titled Zoning Bylaw Amendment and Consent to Sever. If I understand this correctly, the applicant is asking for the subject property to be rezoned from agricultural and natural heritage to rural residential. To us, this appears to be an application for an approval of a subdivision, 3 lots in a confined space. Research on the Ontario government website cites that when you divide a piece of land into 2 or more parcels and offer 1 or more for sale, you are subdividing property, and the provisions of the Planning Act come into play. If your proposal involves creating only a lot or 2, you may seek approval for a land severance. Can the county please address whether the application meets the conditions of a severance, or is it a subdivision application? I have several questions within here that you can answer at the end. I want to talk about the variance. Go ahead.
I'm going to try and get all the questions logged, and then we'll try to get answers at the end. So keep going.
Yes, it's being recorded, so I'm assuming you can pick them up at the end. I want to address the variance on the frontage. The applicant is requesting a variance of 40 meter frontage on lots 2 and 3. The county has provided 2 different versions of the severance schedule detailing the requested variance. One version is requesting an 8 meter variance, which was, I believe, presented earlier in the supporting documentation. And tonight, the variance that is being requested on the frontage is 13 meters. I find this disconcerting. The application has not demonstrated a mitigating factor to allow for such a variance other than the desire to fit 3 building lots into a predetermined space. Asking permission on 2 lots to compensate for an adjoining lot that sits on a floodplain, borders a significant wetland, and requires a 30-meter buffer zone seems counterproductive to respecting natural heritage intended goals. If there isn't enough room for 3 lots, based on the rules and the land use designations, there simply isn't enough room. I want to talk about the lot sizes. There are significant discrepancies on the proposed lot sizes. The county has provided 3 different versions of the severance schedule. It must be noted that the IBM brief and the county severance schedules are not consistent. I draw your attention to the presentation provided by staff, as well as the presentation provided by IBI. As an example, Lot 1 is recorded by IBI as 14,500 square meters. The County of Brant records the same lot as 5,271 square meters. Similar discrepancies in size exist for both lots 2 and 3. Further, depending on what document is referenced, Lot 2 and 3 are clearly deficient to meet the county's lot requirements of 4,000 square meters. The application to sever requests a variance on frontage, but does not ask for a variance on the lot size. Perhaps a discrepancy of this nature is caught or clarified at another step in the process. However, it would seem logical that there is a vetting process prior to acknowledging that an application has been deemed completed, prior to inviting comments and asking a layperson, the public, to figure out what it is the application is actually asking for. Can the county please clarify with respect to what the actual proposed lot sizes are and what the zoning and severance application is intended to address? I'd like to now move on to the wooded buffer area. As per the Natural Heritage Reference Manual, buffers are recommended around woodlands to protect the structural integrity of the vegetation along the edge, as well as to minimize impacts on the woodland functions. The appropriate buffer may vary with the location and the characteristics of the woodland and the nature of the adjacent properties or the adjacent uses, and some of the services that buffers may provide. And there's a list of those, of which it talks about trees and limbs that could fall, filtering of contaminants such as nutrients from lawn, and so on. The ORMCP and the green belt require a minimum 30-meter buffer vegetation protection zone around significant woodlands. For both plans, additional buffer zones may be required to the findings of natural heritage evaluations undertaken when development on site alterations is proposed within 120 meters of the woodland. While we acknowledge the 30-meter buffer zone in the planning document, has the county evaluated the requirement for an additional buffer zone given the significant woodlands on the west side of the lot? Has this been addressed or considered in the rezoning or severance application? Further, the severance sketch and the environmental impact study and planning justification brief all document an encroachment into the 30-meter wooded buffer area to permit the construction of a garage on lot 1. This is not compliant with the requirements of the buffer zone. The following is quoted from the applicant's environmental impact study. As identified during the site walk with County of Brant staff, a significant woodland drip line along the western boundary line extends roughly 2 meters east of the property line. The VPZ buffers have been provided to each of these features to ensure the form and function of that feature is protected. The significant woodland feature has been provided a 20-meter VPZ, inside of which no building envelope will occur. This reduced buffer zone has been provided in order to allow the construction of a small garage to complement, quote unquote, the future residential development.
I have to call you back,
on the
Rick.
westernmost proposed lot.
Okay, I'm on a important call. But
It is not, I'm going to continue.
Yeah,
It is
please continue.
understood that this does not, it is understood that this does not conform with the minimum VPZ width of the 30-meter required in section 4.2.3 of the Growth Plan 2020. This application does not request such an extension of the established rules. Can the county please address this? Again, I say, if there isn't enough room for 3 lots, then there simply isn't enough room. If I understand the rules correctly, there can be no additional buildings on lot 1 due to the 30-meter buffer zone, the rear yard setback, and the interior side setback. My novice calculations suggest that due to that, the 30-meter buffer zone, only 3/5 of lot number 1, stated 1.2 acres, is not suitable or permissible for development. This would then leave 2,108 square meters of habitable space, equating to a little bit more than a half an acre. If the significant woodland buffer zone does not permit development, then why is it included as a part of the overall composition calculation of lot 1's acreage? I would suggest that for the purposes of this application, the parameters of lot 1 should be reevaluated to reflect the true habitable space so as to conform with the required lot acreage and to prevent encroachment on the protected natural heritage area. I now wish to address safety. Our property at 293 is located again on the entire western side of the lot, number 1. It's a natural heritage wooded forest with a variety of trees. And then based on the description of the official plan, this woodland would be considered significant and a key natural heritage, both listed in the OMMAH 2020, as well as the County of Brant 2012. Development and site alteration may be permitted adjacent to this feature if it can be demonstrated that there will be no negative impacts on the natural feature or its ecological function. These trees are an estimated 100 to 130 feet high and present a significant safety hazard to any building or person located within the distance should a tree fall. As mentioned previously, a garage is scheduled to be built within the 30-meter buffer zone, and it's a 15-meter by 10-meter encroachment. This structure would be within the tree fall zone. All of these trees have significant southeasterly lean, given they border an open meadow or orchard. And we all know that data from the Environment Canada reports that prevailing damaging winds in Ontario are traditionally from the west. Is it
Mr.
the
Chairman,
county's
we are at the
desire
10-minute
that these
mark.
stately specimens?
Heather,
I
you're
have-
running out of time. If you can wrap up very quickly, please.
I will then, thank you. I also want to talk about the roughly 2-meter drip line has been identified, estimation of the actual drip line, and it does not address the protection of critical root zone for the significant woodland. In closing, I wish to say that this process has been frustrating at the very least to nail down what the actual numbers are for these lots and the frontage and so on and so forth. I would also suggest to you that if the county is going to make recommendations, roughly recommendations on a drip line, that there should be consultation with the property owners, because we believe those drip lines are underestimated.
Heather,
We are willing to.
can you close this off now, please?
Yep, we are willing to work with the county. I thank you for your time and the opportunity to comment, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I think what you've given us tonight is what you wrote to the county.
Yes, with a few additional calculations based on the most recent submissions.
Okay, thank you. I see one more person wanting to speak. Alicia, do we have anybody else other than Kate? I see Kate's got a hand up.
I do not have anyone else registered to speak on this item.
Okay, then Kate, please speak.
I'm curious to know if the MDS from the livestock facility directly across the street was calculated when these lots were proposed.
Okay, well, we'll try and get some answers. Do you have any other questions? If not, I'll move on. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? I'll ask a second time. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? And finally, a third time, if anybody from the public would like to speak to this. I'll close the public session off now, but I will close it off by asking the agent to answer one or two of the questions that have come up. Specifically that last one, has the MDS been calculated in this application?
An MDS calculation has been provided with the application by DBH Soils.
Thank you.
I don't remember the specifics about across the street, but I'm fairly certain they've evaluated that.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that many of the other questions have come in written form from Heather, and the question from Bob on impact on hydrogeology. I'm going to suggest that we give a written response to that from staff. It will be considered as the application is considered by staff as it moves forward in the process. At that point, I'm going to close the public meeting and hand the matter back to committee and ask them how they would like to move forward with this. Brian, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to be received.
And seconded by John McAlpine. Any further comments or questions from council? Seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All those in favour to receive? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you to Kate and to Heather and to Bob, and we will get back to you with answers to all of your questions. Then moving on to 7.3, which is 282A Highway 5. This is again Caleb, but before we get started, I wanted to say a few things. This is just to remind people, this is an information gathering session. We will hear from staff and the applicant, and we'll hear later from you, the public. County staff will collate and integrate all of this input as they proceed to bring forward a recommendation to council for consideration. So just to reiterate, this is not a decision-making meeting. And I'll come back when we come to the public session to ask for your indulgence and brevity in your commentary. But first we'll hear from Kayla on the staff. Kayla, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good evening, committee and members of the public. My presentation this evening will share the details on the submission of a zoning bylaw amendment application from agent Web Planning Consultants on behalf of the owners of the property CSG Properties Limited. The proposal requests a zoning amendment and site plan control approval in order to facilitate the development of 2 large industrial buildings, having a total floor area in excess of 120,000 square meters, comprising of warehouse and accessory office uses. Before I get to the proposal, I would like to outline to committee and to the public that the application this evening is being presented for information purposes only. Staff are sharing the proposal received, but further consultation between the county and the applicants will be required as the application moves through the planning process. Planning staff have received several emails and calls of public input into this proposal. And as such, I should also emphasize that tonight's meeting is not the only public meeting for this file. There will be additional statutory public meeting to be held, as well as further opportunities for public input through meetings hosted by the applicant and agent. As part of the complete application, the applicants have submitted the following studies. They've submitted a planning justification report, environmental impact study, functional servicing, traffic, noise, archaeological assessments, photometric, and geotechnical investigation. The application being proposed is located at 282 Highway 5 in St. George, and the subject lands are directly west of the existing industrial park in St. George and just east of the Brant Road and Highway 5 intersection. McLean School Road is located further south of the subject lands, and the surrounding land uses generally include residential lots to the north, industrial to the east, and farmlands to the south and to the west. The lands are currently being farmed and have a total area of 36 hectares or approximately 89 acres. The subject lands are designated employment in the County of Brant official plan and subject to site-specific policy area 22. The employment designation has been in place on these lands since 2012. Employment lands are generally intended to be developed for light, heavy, and prestige industrial uses. The subject lands are currently zoned agricultural in the zoning bylaw. This application seeks to bring the zoning into conformity with the official plan designation by proposing an M2 zone where a warehouse is a permitted use. The applicants are also seeking a site-specific amendment to the required parking spaces. According to the zoning bylaw, the proposed use does require a total of 1,142 spaces, but as illustrated on the plan, the applicants are proposing to provide 774 spaces, and therefore the deficiency in parking spaces is 368. The proposal submitted includes 2 large warehouse and accessory office uses. The development is intended to proceed in phases, with the initial phase to include the primary access to Highway 5, as well as Building 1, which is the westerly of the 2 buildings, as shown on my screen. The initial phase will include on-site infrastructure that will support both phases. The parking and loading areas are located on the interior of the site to sort of be located at a distance from the residential uses. The setbacks from residences to the north do currently meet the required zoning bylaw setbacks, But I should note that they will also be required to meet the D6 guideline setbacks. Planning staff acknowledge that this is a significant industrial proposal, which requires additional public consultation and further discussions and analysis of the proposal. At this time, I would like to address some of the common questions and concerns that we have received from the public. So in terms of some of the common concerns, one of them is traffic. So we have received several questions and concerns in terms of traffic or specifically road patterns. And I can confirm that a traffic impact study has been submitted by a traffic professional engineer. The study is subject to internal review. Additionally, staff have been in discussions with the applicants regarding the road patterns, and ongoing discussions are taking place to ensure that the road networks do not preclude future development off-site. Further work and revisions to the submission are required in this regard. The restrictions on truck traffic. So truck traffic has been a common concern that we've heard from the neighbors, and I can note that restrictions for truck traffic movement off-site is something that we can look at and integrate through the site plan process. Another common question and concern has been loss of farmland. So I can confirm that although these lands are currently being farmed, the official plan designation of the lands is employment. And this designation, as stated earlier, has been in place since 2012. Therefore, the long-term intent is that these lands would be developed for dry industrial type uses. Another common point received from the neighbors has to do with noise and light pollution. A noise study has been submitted as part of the complete application. Internal and peer review is required and ongoing as it relates to noise, and recommendations of the noise study, such as a sound wall, would be and are included into the design at the site plan stage. Staff or council may choose to implement more restrictive measures as it relates to buffering and noise. And in terms of lighting, all site plans are required in terms of lighting to be dark sky compliant and contained on site. Lighting plans have been submitted for this application. And as noted, our zoning bylaw does allow for peer review of a lighting plan prepared by a professional engineer. The lighting plan shall be required to verify that the lighting will have a level of illuminance and glare that does not negatively impact surrounding uses or the night sky. I want to also add that the D6 guidelines are a provincially regulated document that serves as another policy tool to ensure that industrial developments are an appropriate distance from sensitive land uses. And so these guidelines outline the requirements, and the applicants are required to be submitting further D6 guideline analysis to staff. Another one of the common questions that we've received from the public relates to the M2 versus the M3 zoning. And so this application is seeking the M2 light industrial zone for a warehouse, but a warehouse is also a permitted use within the M3 heavy industrial zone. The main difference between the two M2 and M3 zone is really just the required setbacks, specifically the side yard and street setbacks, which are increased when looking at the M3 zone. I would suggest that further discussions on the appropriate setbacks will continue with the applicants. And then another question relates to size and scale. So it is true this proposal is significant in scale, and planning staff are cognizant that the proposal is required to fit within the character of the neighborhood, given the abutting industrial and residential developments. Further, site-specific zoning is one tool that can be used to address this concern and will be considered before a recommendation report is brought back to council. I should also note there are no specific policies that preclude industrial development at this size and scale. Servicing. So the lands do fall within a site-specific policy area that specifically gears the type of industrial use to one that is dry in nature. So full servicing is not projected to be available to these lands. And so the proposal will be required to connect to municipal water, but will need to be serviced by a private septic system for wastewater needs. And further internal discussions regarding servicing are ongoing. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch upon looking at alternative locations and economic development for this site. So the proposal seeks to create potentially 200 to 500 jobs within the county. And one of the common questions received is whether the applicants have worked with staff to consider alternate locations. And so I can confirm that consideration has been given to all appropriate sites in the county, but with the amount of land that the developer was looking for, the site in St. George met all the criteria. This application is still under review, and additional public meetings will take place before the application is brought back to council at a later date for recommendation. Once a recommendation report is prepared, new notices of the application will be circulated. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Kayla, for the presentation and the additional information. If you could bring us back to full screen, I'll take questions starting with Steve and then Joan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Kayla. Kayla, I know I've asked this question before, but just for the benefit of anyone who is watching, you touched on the subject of, excuse me, the subject of the land designation for this property, and I understand that for 20 years it has been designated employment. But could you summarize for us just what that means, the significance of the term designation versus zoning? Just so that we can all kind of understand that. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor House, yes, no problem. There is a difference between an official plan designation on a property and a zoning on the property. So the official plan is the municipality's general policies for the future land use of those lands. So in this case, the land use intent is employment. Zoning bylaws are the regulatory document that puts the official plan into place and into effect, and is more the regulatory document that will control the specific type of use on the property. The zoning would control the setbacks or the parking, for instance. So overall, the zoning bylaw implements the objectives of the county's official plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify, a previous speaker mentioned 20 years. It's actually 10 or 9 years from if it was designated in 2012, as Kayla mentioned. Correct, Kayla? And
Through the chair to Councillor Gatward, yes, that is correct. And I can also confirm that the previous official plan, which was 2000, did show that these lands were intended to be converted to employment lands at that time.
And my next question is regarding what you mentioned about the traffic study and the noise study. You said both had been completed. And did I hear you correctly when you mentioned a sound wall? Was it that a sound wall was needed or not needed?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. A noise study and a traffic study have been submitted as part of the complete application. Recommendations of the noise study do conclude to have a noise wall on the north side of the property, and the applicants have shown that on their current site.
On the north side, that would be on the highway side.
Through the chair, yes, that would be the side that abuts the residential zone.
And could I please have a copy of the traffic and sound zone study sent to me. Thank you.
To the chair, yes, we can look after that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say that Kayla answered most of my questions, so that was good what she did. Preemptive. I just want to be clear, through you, Mr. Chair, to Kayla, a photometric study, that's the same thing as a lighting study, yes?
Through the chair, yes, that is the lighting plan.
Okay, and then my second question, Kayla, for you, this application, I mean, were to go forward, would need a drainage plan. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay, reading the comments from the public, how far away is Fairchild Creek from this property? I looked online, I could not tell. In other words, would it be flowing into Fairchild Creek? Not directly.
I don't have that information with me this evening, but we can follow up with that for you.
Okay, and the only reason, again, Mr. Chair, I bring that up, it was mentioned in a couple of the letters from the public.
Yeah, indeed it was. Thank you, David. Any additional questions to Kayla? John McAlpine and then Robert, and then we'll go back to Joan.
So a few months ago, we had an application come forward at 539 Paris Road, and it was another similar warehouse, and we decided to put it to M3 to give us more control over the site plans. And I'm just wondering if that should be considered in this case as well.
I would suggest that the M2 zone could be an appropriate zone, but that there would be further restrictions through site-specific setbacks, in which case we could implement similar type setback requirements of the M3 zone, such as the 50-meter setback requirement of the M3. And there's also the ability to eliminate uses that are currently permitted as of right in the M3 zone, that then may be a consideration as well.
So the other thing I'm kind of concerned about is that there's plans to do a secondary official plan in the next couple of years for this area to sort of determine how that we were going to utilize this area and how we could create the road systems so that we don't landlock the other potential properties to be developed. And I would hope that in that process, we would have been able to create roadways, maybe perhaps going through to 24 highway. So I'm kind of considering that this is kind of premature application. So it's sort of along the lines of that how we've been looking at developing other areas regarding housing, that sort of the tap the brakes mentality on this kind of thing. So that the way that this is looking, it doesn't really meet our minimum standards regarding the job creation per hectare. In fact, I'm under the impression it's about half the amount, the minimum amount that we're proposing under our new official plan. So that a lot of this would hopefully have at least two, entrances and exits, and hopefully mitigate a lot of the traffic going through St. George. It also relates to the problems with traffic on 24. We've had 2 accidents just in the last week, and it's a very busy road. And just recently, we had, about the last 7 years, I believe, we had an extra road that we were proposing to be built on the other side of St. George because of the excess traffic in this area. So I would hope that the provincial government would be taking a close look at the traffic report that's being brought forward.
Thank you, John. Kayla, I'm sure you've made note of that. Move on to Robert.
Thank you, John, and through you to Kayla. You had mentioned that alternative sites were looked at. I'm just wondering if you considered alternate sites that may have required an official plan amendment, or did you just look at sites that were currently designated?
Chair, to Councillor Chambers. We do have our General Manager of Strategic Initiatives on the line tonight, who can speak further to the alternate site considerations.
Through you, Mr. Chair, economic development staff did work with the applicant and their agent. It was nearly a year ago when this sort of process started, and did look at all sites within the county that were either already designated as employment land or were under consideration for designation to employment under the new current official plan process.
Go ahead, Robert.
But just to be clear, you did not contemplate areas that could be where an application for an official plan amendment on lands that weren't designated yet. You didn't look at those.
For you, Mr. Chair, no, we didn't. We only looked at lands, like I said, that were already designated or were under consideration for an OPA through the current process of the new official plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alison. Joan, you had another question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I should have asked this previously. What could you tell us, Kayla, are the proposed number of trucks per day? And with 200 to 500 employees, why do they need 774 parking spaces? I guess there's two questions there.
Where the traffic impact study does suggest that there would be day and night traffic, and it would be in the approximate range of about 220 units in the day. We do have the agent on the line who could also probably speak more to details related to the traffic. In terms of the required parking spaces, the zoning bylaw sets out the required number given the use, but it's my understanding that the developers, Panattoni, are leaders in warehouse development and do have sort of their own justification in terms of the required parking that they need to operate a warehouse facility.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayla. And you mentioned infrastructure earlier. The road network is 2 lanes, and when we built something of this magnitude in another area of the county, we were required by the provincial government to make road improvements. Has that been determined yet?
Through the chair to Councillor Gatward, the application is currently still under review, and I can confirm that the application has been submitted to the Ministry of Transportation for their comments as well, but we don't have any conclusions in terms of what needs to be done for upgrades.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any further questions to Kayla? If not, I'll move on to the agent of the applicant. Thank you, Kelly, for doing that so far. Stay with us. I think we have James Webb on the line.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is James Webb. I'm a registered professional land use planner, and I'm going to speak to you tonight on behalf of the development manager, Panattoni Development Company. But first, I'd like to introduce Mr. Michael Smeal, who would like to provide a few introductory comments on behalf of Panattoni. So if we could arrange that through the technology wizardry of who's in control of speaking, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James, and I'm on, so hopefully everybody can hear me. So, and thank you for your time tonight. And we just wanted to take this opportunity to let you know that, you know, we welcome this opportunity to engage with council and the community. Thank you for sharing some questions and concerns about the development, and we look forward to continued engagement and discussion. I know that residents are concerned that this development will have negative impacts on the community. I understand that we're, you know, viewed as a big bad developer and that we don't have the community interests at heart. I understand that residents don't want further truck traffic that will be associated with this development. And understand that you don't want development that creates noise and light in your backyard. We fully appreciate that the plan that's been submitted, that it is a big change. So I wanted to take this opportunity just to express that we are committed and look forward to meaningful engagement with the residents. We are complying with and working within the St. George official plan and their growth mandate. We will continue to work with staff and the community to address and mitigate concerns. We're committed to investing the time and effort required in order to achieve a successful and beneficial development for St. George. We know that we won't be able to satisfy everyone, but we will be present, honest, and transparent. And we look forward to the next opportunity to continue this discussion. So thank you, and I'll pass it back over to James Webb to review in further detail.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm going to share my screen if I may. So again, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address committee tonight. Again, the applications that are before you this evening are applications to amend your zoning bylaw and an amendment seeking, an application for site plan approval to implement a development that we see as already being permitted by your higher order planning policies. Because of the framework, we need to go through a much more detailed review exercise to determine if in fact we have a use that directly complies with all of the policies of your official plan with regards to not just permitted uses in the designation, but its proper regard for all of the environmental considerations, site servicing considerations, the necessary infrastructure in terms of roads, and considerations of impacts. Again, the purpose of tonight's meeting really is an introductory opportunity for us to introduce Panattoni and the approach that they intend to take towards the development of this site. And I think we really wanted to convey to you a very strong commitment from Panattoni and the team of consultants that they've retained to engage in some very meaningful dialogue with not just your staff as required in the processing of any development application, but it's thorough dialogue with the adjoining property owners who may be impacted by this development. We do intend, following tonight's meeting, to arrange a more focused, perhaps maybe even in-person meeting if the rules would allow, so that we can actually have a face-to-face meeting with people, make available our full consulting team, and share all of the technical information that we've compiled to date that we believe supports the proposed development of this property. I do have a brief presentation that I'll just quickly run through. Again, as you heard from Kayla, and it's my submission to you that the application before you tonight is really one that is implementing planned development. Since 2012, the lands have been flagged for the employment area. This figure is actually from your new draft official plan, which is pending for final approvals. And it continues with that theme wherein the lands are shown and intended to be developed for a range of employment uses. And that range of uses is broad. It's potentially could allow manufacturing, processing, and warehousing, but ultimately the scale of the use that's going to fit onto this property is going to be a consideration of what surrounds it, what services are available, and how we integrate with the natural environment and considerations in that regard. This is an aerial photograph that shows the extent of the property. You can see that it's today predominantly farmland. We are located immediately to the west of a small industrial precinct that was developed some time ago that has an entrance out to Highway 5 by Commerce Court. And it has additional collector streets, Prospect Street, that unfortunately don't provide direct access to this property. There's a narrow band of land that separates us from those road allowances. And to date, we've not been successful in securing the necessary permissions to allow for those direct submissions. So the property, as you can see from the plan, does have direct frontage onto Highway 5. It in fact used to be a broader frontage, but due to some severance applications that were processed about 10 years ago, portions of this property were actually severed and converted back to residential use. So we're working with what we have left, which is 20 meters wide. You can see on one side, there was actually a triangle that was taken, anticipating that that would be a location for a future access for these development lands onto Highway 5. Also evident from the photograph, you can see it on the west and the southwest corner of the site, we have woodlines. There is a tributary of Fairchild Creek. I can confirm a primary tributary to the northeast that's off-site, and another tributary that's to the, essentially to the middle and to the west of the property, and that's where we do intend to have our stormwater outlets directed to. And in saying that, we have certainly completed significant technical studies of the natural environment to understand the character, the qualities of the natural heritage system, that then translates into what sort of setbacks may be required, such that when we develop these lands, we won't be having any negative or adverse impacts onto those adjoining natural heritage features. So that forms part of our preliminary work that's guided how we intend to develop the lands. The properties immediately to the south of us also form part of the employment area. And further to the south of that, there is, I believe, a golf course. And we've been talking with county staff to the topic of integration and planned road networks. And the dialogue to date through pre-consultation and further discussions with staff is we have taken that into consideration as part of this development. How do we design this development to make sure that we integrate with and facilitate planned development, not just of this property, but how does it complement and make available the development of the adjoining land? So that's one of the considerations to date, and certainly a topic that we'll continue working through in our review of the application with staff. There's a brief rendering of what the building is intended to look like. I'll go more to the substance. This is a excerpt, as you see, of the site plan. The project, as initially envisioned, provides for two buildings, Building 1 and Building 2. We intend to proceed on the basis of a phased development where in the westerly building, building number 1, will be developed in the immediate future, with both properties benefiting from that road connection up to highway number 5. The buildings have been designed in a manner that we have tried to respect the neighboring residential properties that do front onto highway number 5. The orientation is that we abut their rear lot lines. So the manner in which we've designed the buildings, we've tried to orient all of the higher order activity spaces, the loading, the truck staging, the truck parking areas are to the sides and effectively shielded from those areas to the north. At the bottom of the site is where we intend to put our stormwater management facility and our private septic system. We will be connecting to the public municipal water system, but for the purposes of sanitary services, there will be a private system, obviously appropriately designed to make sure that any effluent that enters the groundwater has been appropriately treated before it's released into the groundwater. The next image provides a blow up and provides you a clear understanding of how this building relates to the lands immediately to the north. Again, the project is sited such that the elevation that's directly oriented does not include any loading spaces. There is automobile parking, but we've designed in a manner to mitigate and separate that traffic. Excuse me, pardon me. And we've also designed the building in a manner that, in fact, we are trying to exceed your zoning bylaw regulations in certain regards. You heard about setbacks. Your current zoning regulations would only require a 10-meter setback subject to filling D6 guidelines, which could allow as limited as, depending on the categorization, could allow as little as a 20-meter separation. We tried to increase it. In this instance, we're showing you a 45-meter separation to the rear yards at its closest point, and that increases to about 75 meters. So there's a pretty significant increase in that setback. We're also proposing overall building coverages that are significantly less than would otherwise be permitted. Bylaw allows 60%, we're coming in at around 30. Heard commentary with regards to parking. Again, a pure application of the bylaw would require in excess of 1,000 parking spaces for both buildings. Panattoni, this is their...
James, can I just interrupt you for a second? There are lots of people who appear not to be muted. I would appreciate if they would mute so that we could all hear your presentation. Carry on, James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Panattoni has developed a significant number of buildings, and they have a very good understanding of what tenant demands are. And we find in too many cases that the zoning bylaws don't necessarily reflect the specifics of those users, and the bylaw requirements end up over parking the sites, which means more asphalt, unnecessary construction, unnecessary hardscaping of the lands, which in Panattoni's experience is completely unnecessary based on the tenant loading and the tenant demands of the property. So in this particular instance, yes, we're proposing a total parking supply of about 770 spaces, which is a reduction, but we have provided staff with best practices information and examples from other municipalities wherein we've demonstrated that that supply that we're proposing here, in fact, is certainly in line and may in fact be greater than some of the other municipalities that we have worked in. The plan, through the guidance of a team of natural environment scientists, again, the site has been looked at very carefully in terms of its existing natural condition. We are making sure, to the extent that we can, that we respect the limits of all those natural heritage features. We've produced an environmental impact study that recommends minimum buffers. That's currently with county environment staff and the Grand River Conservation for their review and ongoing discussion in terms of how they will view those findings, and a further dialogue and further study may be warranted. And again, back to this interface with the properties that are backing on Highway 5. So you heard we have completed a number of technical studies. One of those was a noise study, which is in this case fundamental to matters of land use compatibility. There's no processing, there's no fabricating, so we're not concerned about vibration, dust, and odor. It's about potential noise impacts. So we did a study. The study has come back that says, based on planned operations and with the incorporation of an acoustic fence that provides a degree of mitigation, that, again, please appreciate the context, that the technical study demonstrates that it meets all of the established ministry guidelines, and those guidelines are put in place by the province to determine what is acceptable. So we're happy to share that information with the public. Again, it demonstrates that we're meeting the thresholds through that mitigation, and that's how we respond to that technical issue about will there be noise impacts and noise nuisance that's created by the operation.
Mr. Chairman, we are at the 10-minute mark.
Thank you. James, are you close to the end of your
Yeah,
presentation?
Mr. Chairman, I can just quickly wrap up. I think you heard Mr. Smeal talk about the benefits to the community. Obviously, we're implementing controlled growth. There'll be significant infrastructure that is developed as part of this. You plan for employment growth because you need an expanded tax base. You need a balanced tax base that offsets residential with employment growth. There'll be jobs that are created and significant development charges that are paid. That's the list of technical studies that we've completed and submitted to begin the process. That was stipulated by the county staff through a pre-consultation exercise. So you can see that it's extensive, it's technical, it's design related, and collectively is meant to demonstrate that in fact we are in total conformity with the policies of your official plan, and that the development does represent good planning. Again, next steps, we've heard the concerns, and we're certainly here this evening to give full and complete attention to the oral submissions that will follow. We've heard characterization of the issues to date in terms of noise, traffic, scale and visual impacts, groundwater and runoff. We believe that all of those issues have been addressed by our technical studies, and that's why we really want to engage with the neighbors in addition to county and agency staff, but we really want to share that information with them so they can see the work that's gone into this project to date to demonstrate that it will not have any adverse impacts. Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with my client has an excellent track record of not only developing the highest quality buildings that are responsive to where we find ourselves today with the change of climate. They build sustainable development, they build resilient development. It's of the highest quality, and the process that they get to achieve building is collaborative and participatory with both the municipal staff and area residents. So we look forward to doing that in this project and coming back to you at some future date following the detailed review of the studies that we've completed, any further updates that we may require to address any issues that are raised, such that we are back before this committee with the support of planning staff and have been able to address the concerns of the neighborhood such that you can in fact implement what you have planned for the last 10 years. And that's to accommodate an appropriate form of industrial development on these lands.
Thank you,
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to assist you with any questions. There's members of the Panattoni team that are on the call as well.
Thank you. If you could just return us to the full screen, please. And I would invite members of the committee to ask questions. Robert, are you asking a question? No. Questions to James? Seeing none, and I'll move into the, thank you, James, and move into the, John, you have a question.
Yeah. Just in reference to the number of employees that you're proposing, I'm a little concerned about those numbers. Is there any way that you're able to sort of back that up? Typically, warehouses, from what I understand now, are so automated that they actually don't supply that many jobs. And so like Adidas right now, they only have approximately 100 employees there. And I understand it's close to 1 million square feet. It's also closer to a major 403 access. So, I mean, that's another plus in its favor, though, at least.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, again, the ultimate end user has not been assigned to this particular building. Panattoni has a number of people who've indicated certainly an interest in coming to St. George. They like everything about the site. They like the community. They like the dynamics. That's something that we'll take away with us and I think provide a supplemental submission that deals with specifically what we are anticipating in terms of the employment loading. I do know in my experience, I've now done a number of these projects, and yes, the initial perception was that warehouses had very low and limited employment numbers, and I do know that that in fact is not the case. Warehouses require significant number of employees in order for these operations to work smoothly, not just within the building, but also appreciate all of the secondary employment that comes with that, whether it's the trucking and all the other ancillary uses that support the use. So we will respond to that in one of our follow-up submissions.
Thank you. At that point, I'm going to move on to the public part of this issue. And I want to say a few words. There are many residents who wish to speak. I think the total number is anywhere between 15 and 18 and possibly more. We've already received a lot of written comments, and there appears to be quite some commonality in the commentary and concerns raised. And I'm also aware that many residents have actually requested the supporting documents, and as such, I anticipate delegates are going to be very well informed. So as we move into this public input session, as the chair, I would ask for your cooperation as follows. As delegates speak, staff, councillors and the applicant will diligently note your concerns, but there is the potential for a significant amount of repetition. So I would appreciate that each speaker limit his or her comments to succinct support to previous speakers' comments, if that's the case, and then limit additional comments to as yet unheard concerns or commentary, or any views contrary to or expanding on the comments of previous speakers. So it's not our intention to limit your right to speak, but with so many delegates at tonight's meeting, I need to ensure that we cover the whole agenda efficiently. But be assured, all of your comments or concerns are being recorded. The whole meeting is being recorded. And as I said earlier, they will be considered by staff as they prepare their recommendations. And finally, I would appreciate if all delegates that speak begin by stating their name and address for the record. So with that, I'm going to move on. I'm going to ask Alicia if she would manage this for me and if she could bring forward the first delegate.
The first member of the public registered to speak on this item is Shirley and Elaine Marion.
Shirley, where are you?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Shirley. Give name and address, please.
Shirley and Alan Marion. I'm at 284 Highway 5 in St. George. We are one of the adjacent properties to the development.
Go ahead.
Basically, our main concerns, a lot of the, as you said, they have been touched upon. We have issues with the traffic on Highway 5 now as it is, without having 200 plus trucks during the day. And I don't think it was stated how much truck traffic was expected at night. Apparently it is going to be a 24-hour facility, or at least more than a day shift is what comment I heard there. So we're definitely, wondering what kind of effect it will have on the town, on the highway. Highway 24 is very busy already. Highway 5 is very busy. And we just don't feel that the current highway is equipped to handle that kind of truck traffic. Say nothing about the access road that they're trying to put between two houses here. The trucks take a lot of space. They need to slow down and speed up and all of that sort of thing. We're also concerned about the noise. I understand there's something about a wall being put up. I mean, obviously we want to have it as aesthetic as possible. If something is going in, perhaps a berm might be more feasible, something a little more nature looking rather than just a wall. Might be something that the neighbors might be more, able to do. We're concerned about the safety of the children on the street. There's several school bus stops along Highway 5. And it's just the increased traffic overall is a real main concern. Not only about the how this development is going to fit with the small town of St. George. I mean, just because you can put it on 89 acres doesn't mean it belongs here. There was some mention about maybe some other sites that might be permissible, that maybe we need to put some more thought and consideration into that. Maybe they're not zoned currently, but maybe they could be. And it might be something closer to the 401 or 403 that would be a better solution than something in the backyard of a small town. I think that basically sums up what we have to say.
Thank you, Shirley. Very succinct. Do appreciate it. Alicia, next delegate, please.
Next, we have a Howard Hussey Jr.
Hello, it's Howard Hussey. I'm at 292 Highway 5. My home backs onto this development. I've been here for 32 years, and I am very opposed to this, and for various reasons. I believe it's the development is too large and brings too few jobs to the area. I also have concerns about the development across the road on the other side of the highway. We've been told for many years that there's housing development coming across the road. So in all these traffic studies and other studies and impact studies, has anybody considered all the new homes, schools, etc., that will be built across the street? I'd like to know if there's been any kind of study or anything done with that. Also, the lands to the west. There's another farm to the west that's in this industrial zoning future plan. So when we come to that development, has anybody considered what will happen with that? What impact will that have to this area on top of this and all the truck traffic that it brings? I've also noticed that there's only the one entrance and exit for this giant facility that's going to go back here. What if there's an accident at that intersection where they go? What happens to everything here? How do people get out if there's a fire? If there's anything like that, there's been no concerns about that. We're on a volunteer fire department here. There's very little of the, they're going to have their own little pond at the back. Is that where we're going to draw water from for a fire? Or is the municipal water large enough to handle a large sprinkler system like this? And then also I have, like I say, how come it's a driveway, I believe, that we can't access from the Agler industrial area? Is that correct? Is the farm's driveway that comes up there why they can't get access? Can we review that and give them access from the existing? Like, I would rather see a lot smaller development with multiple small buildings back here, similar to what we already have in this village. This doesn't meet anything that I see anywhere around it. It belongs next to a 400 series highway. And I agree with Councillor McAlpine that the job creation seems low, and that we are reviewing the new official plan within the next 2 years, and maybe it's just something that should be bumped for 2 years and then look at it. Like, we should be looking at infrastructure for this area. We need infrastructure across the road to develop these homes. We should have infrastructure for sanitary and storm sewers for this facility for something this big. And it's something the county should be looking at, is when are we getting these services? Is there enough electricity here to run something that they're going to put in there? Is there enough gas? I looked at their environmental study. I go through all that, and sure, it sounds great, but I also noticed that there's pages from another building in Aberfoyle that are part of this, and it references to some places in Aberfoyle instead of St. George. So how flawed is the rest of this stuff? Are there maximum heights to this building? This thing is like 45 feet tall in my backyard. What are our bylaws in regards to building heights, building and the lighting? I think it's just too large for the area, and I also, how many, the trees that are cut down for that whole area. Like, can we? Are we just going to let them cut this? And the hours of work. So far the construction is set 6 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Will there be restrictions on the hours of work once something like this is built? And how many hours do I have to listen to these trucks gear down in front of my home? Will they be widening the highway? Will I lose part of my front lawn for the widening? I think that's all I have for now, but I certainly welcome meeting with the developers and meeting with council and the mayor or whoever would talk to me, because this does not fit within our community.
Howard, thank you for your input. You covered a few things that Shirley also covered, so we're building up a base list of concerns. If the next set of speakers could build on that, that would be very helpful. Howard, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alicia, if we can move on to the next delegate, please.
Next, we have Howard Hussey Sr.
Howard.
Yes. Good evening.
I presume you live at the same address, do you, Howard?
Yeah, my address is 290 Highway 5. My son lives next door. We've been here for 32 years. We'll be sharing a property line with the proposed development. A lot of the things that I have been covered, so that's great. I'll skip right past all of the zonings and the truck traffic and all that sort of stuff. And the widening of Highway 5, my son just covered. One concern is at the east end of town, past the middle of town, we have houses, businesses, church and that are almost on top of the highway now. If we ever had to widen that highway because of this, all of these developments, we're going to have costs of tearing down buildings to widen that road. It's pretty narrow there. So that's one thing that hasn't been mentioned. The other thing is St. George has historical value. I think that just goes right out the door as soon as you do this development. So that's one item. The highway, the biggest thing there is road maintenance, and can the existing highway withstand that many trucks? Do we have to dig up the whole highway and put in heavier asphalt, etc.? Who pays for all that but the taxpayers? So like I say, a lot of the other stuff has been covered. School crossing I don't think was covered. We have that school crossing just a stone's throw away. Downtown St. George will be if this happened in Paris, it would completely destroy Paris to do something like this in a little historical town. So I'm against it strongly. I think it's poor planning. So looking at my notes, so I don't repeat other people's things. You know, the smaller industries there's no land left for any other industries in this town. We have small industries here. If we want to grow some more industry in St. George, where the heck do we go now? You know, maybe you have an answer to that, I don't know. But I've talked to a lot of residents, both on Highway 5 and off Highway 5. I've talked to real estate people, and here's my one big concern. The drop in the value of our homes, according to the real estate people I've talked to, having that highway and that 3-lane trucking going up to the back, that's going to drop the value of our property some 5 to 10%, and in a couple of cases, possibly 25% value. Who's paying for that? So I don't know. I'm quite upset over this whole thing. And if it goes through, the first thing I'm going to do is go to my lawyer and start a class action lawsuit. That's my opinion. You know, that's my layman's opinion. You know, if others have already started a similar plan, they can count on my support. If we need funding for a lawsuit, then I guess we'll have to start a GoFundMe. You know, my final sort of note is this will destroy Highway 5 and St. George as we know it. Let's stick to smaller businesses, not this great big monstrosity with 300 trucks coming in. Thank you.
Howard, thank you. Your point's very clear. Thank you for adding to the earlier list rather than repeating it. Do appreciate it. Alicia, if we could move on to the next item, please.
Next, we have Don Tilma.
Hello, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sure.
All right.
Don, can you just give us your address, please?
282 uppercase B. Highway 5, St. George.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, we get the privilege of listening to these 300 transport trucks go up and down the hill. If this goes through, if you do the math on that pretty picture he sent, there's roughly maybe 250, 300 docking bays, as well as they have to load them and unload them. So those trucks don't sit there empty. They got to get filled and unfilled. So it's the laneway is not wide enough. It's a laneway. You look at the other two entrances into the industrial park, they're double the size and they're only 2 lanes. It's also a 20-foot rise over 300 feet. So trucks coming down that are going to slide in the intersection on a snowy day. So there's going to be accidents. Well, actually, you know, the coffee people in town, if they get their place, have 2 spots to stop and get coffee. It's not safe. We don't want a big box warehouse in the back. Am I forward and want forward and progress? Absolutely. When we bought this place, we came from Tri-Cities, Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo, also from Hamilton, both over 600,000 population. And we thought St. George is nice. We like this. This is where we're going to retire. We're in our 50s. And then we get this big box warehouse sent to us. And then I hear from Michael and James that, you know, we've tried and done due diligence. We haven't heard from them. They've already presented their plan, and then they're going to talk to us. Well, are you going to change your plan? I hope the mayor and the councilors are all there when they talk to us, because basically he already said, well, some of you aren't going to like what you hear.
John, just
night sky. Well, there's going to be lights there. A truck doesn't drive in the blind, so there's going to be a night sky. It's gone. We can't see the night sky. Is any money staying in Brant County? No. People that want to buy a house in Brant County and the people that they have to hire, and no disrespect, I started out making entry wages, so none of this money stays in Brant County. We're in the middle of nowhere in terms of transport trucks. These trucks have to get the 403, they have to get the 401. That's Highway 24 or Highway 6 or Highway, yeah, that's it. So then they're going to cut through German School Road and do the back roads. They're going to come up Highway St. George Road, right by the people that live on St. George. So no, there hasn't been a whole lot of thought put into this. And they say they've tried, so I disagree. Reading through all the study documents I got, the one environmental study from Lincoln, the pictures are from a Nestle food factory in London. So all their studies are null and void. So if you guys believe these studies, they got to start over, and I'll be happy to supervise them so they're actually accurate. Lincoln, page 2930. So yeah, I'm a little bit, I guess you can sense I'm not happy. Am I against progress? No. Am I against a big box warehouse in a perfectly good field? Yes.
John, thank you for your comments. Just to make a comment back, this is our normal process. This is a multi-stage process, and this is the opportunity for you and members of the public to make your inputs. As I said, no decisions are being made today, but we are anxious to understand the input, and it will be considered as we move forward and staff bring forward a recommendation. I think there have been so many issues brought up that this will probably require an additional public meeting, which I believe the applicant has already mentioned, but I think there's an opportunity for us to also come back as county with answers to these questions. But before I conclude that, if I could move on, Don, thank you very much. Alicia, next speaker.
Thank you.
Please.
Next, we have Karen Downey.
Karen has had to go. She left.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Alicia?
Okay, next we would have Steve Schmidt.
Steve, are you on the line?
Steve Schmidt or Steve Sickle?
Schmidt.
If Steve Schmidt is not on the line, then let's move on.
Okay, next we have a Nicole and David McFarland.
Nicole and David, are you online?
Yes, we are online.
Good evening. Could you give us your address, please, Nicole?
We are at 27 Russell Crescent in St. George.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
I just want to applaud John McAlpine for his comments. I want to applaud the other citizens of St. George that have spoken. We're also very upset about this. We're at the other end of town and we're upset about this. I would like to know, when this application was given to the committee, why didn't somebody just say no? This is crazy. I'm at a loss for words, and I guess that's all I have to say. But thank you, John, for being the wisest person on the committee tonight, for bringing up what you did.
Nicole, thank you for that commentary. Just a word in response. This is the process, and anybody is able to make an application. They follow the process. It isn't necessarily so that they come out of it at the end with what they are hoping for, but every application has to go through this process. We cannot deny it without this public process.
Okay,
And
fair enough.
Thank you for your input.
All right, fair enough. Good evening.
Next speaker, please, Alicia.
Next is Bob and Meryl Amerman.
Bob, Meryl, are you online? Another try. Bob, Meryl, are you online? I guess not. Let's move on, please, Alicia.
Next is Teresa Hines.
Teresa, are you with
I
us?
am. Can you hear me?
We can. If you could give us your address, please, Teresa.
30 Andrew Street in St. George. And really all I want to do is echo everything that the citizens have said. I'm concerned about the traffic on Highway 5, the school zone. We walk every night and it's hard to cross Highway 5 now without a truck going by every 5 minutes. And many accidents on 24 at St. George Road, not McLean School Road.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, and it's very concerning. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Teresa. Very succinct. I do appreciate that you lend support to others rather than repeating. Thank you very much. Alicia, next speaker, please.
Next, we have a Corey Couture.
Corey, are you online? Corey, are you with us? I guess not. Let's keep going, Alicia.
Next, we have a Jeanette Plant.
I've seen Jeanette's, yeah, Jeanette is there. Are you with us, Jeanette? Jeanette?
Okay, I'm unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you. Good evening. Could you just give us your...
I think it just all boils down to Highway 5 is a 2-lane highway through residential, through schools, through a small little village that houses are right there on Highway 5. Like, it's ridiculous. And I don't know who anybody could think that this is a good idea. That's basically my comment. This is a building that should be closer to the highway, Highway 401, Highway 403, not a 2-lane highway. People moved to this village to get away from all this nonsense. And now you're trying to bring it into our backyard. That's my comment.
Jeanette, thank you. Could you just give me your address for the record, please?
Yes, I'm also on Russell Crescent, number 33.
Thank you. And thank you for your, again, very succinct comments. Moving on, Alicia, please.
Next, we have Mike Layman.
Hi, this is Mike Lamont. I am at 288 Highway 5. I am on the north side and will back directly onto the proposed development. I will try not to elaborate on what's already been said, but I do think it's important that I do highlight some of the things that have already been said, because I like you to hear it from me, and I like it to be recorded for me as well. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present at this meeting. It's been mentioned a number of times, location suitability. This is not in close proximity to any major highway, no highway access. I don't understand how this can possibly complement the village of St. George. Traffic volume and safety on Highway 5 and the potential of trucks barreling through town to get to Highway 6 and the impact on an already somewhat dangerous Highway 24 usage. I think about the safety of our families and the local community with the influx of vehicles for which the infrastructure is clearly not designed for. There's been comment about noise. There in the proposed plan is a 6-foot concrete barrier for sound. Now, every truck that pulls into this, every tractor trailer by law will have to give a signal when it's backing up. Every forklift that is unloading a tractor trailer will have to signal when it's exiting that truck, however many times it goes in and out. Do you really think that a 6-foot barrier is going to eliminate the sound of all that beeping throughout the day and potentially through the night? I find that hard to believe. I think there's a lot of change that would have to be considered if this was to go through. I'm concerned about the impact of light, noise, and emission that will significantly deteriorate the quality of life for local residents. Residents don't know anything about the proposed hours of operation. It was interesting. Mr. Webb talked about the noise in the planned operation. If we can share those hours of operation, I think there's a lot of residents of St. George who'd be interested. In addition to the letter that I sent, there's a couple things I'd like to go back. I'm looking at a new official plan document that was issued on July 29th, 2021. And in this document, it says, undergrowth management. New projects will only be able to start when servicing infrastructure like water, wastewater, and traffic capacity is available within 3 years. I've heard that there's 200 to 500 potential employees, 300 trucks. So let's just say between 500 and 800 people will be going in and out of that facility every day. That's 5 to 800 people that'll be using the bathroom, how many times a day, and also using all the water. Now, we talked about a private septic system. To be honest, I'm a little bit concerned about that volume, and I don't think the infrastructure is there for this. Under building healthy and complete communities, it says a new zoning bylaw will implement the policies of the new official plan with requirements for setbacks, green space, and density. We're giving up a lot of green space here for this. I don't see how this proposed development complements that. When we talk about protecting what we value, it says agricultural system policies. New policies will prevent severances in rural areas. It will protect farming, restrict incompatible uses, and support local initiatives.
Excuse me, Mike, somebody's making a lot of noise. If everybody could mute their microphones, please. Please carry on, Mike.
Sure. Under truck route management plan, it says additional planning that will complement the truck route management plan will help address specific issues like managing truck routes and bypasses around the county of Brant. This does nothing to support that. Under economic development and prosperity, it says the new reserve of land will provide a large employment area in proximity to Highway 403 and Rest Acres Road and improve the supply of jobs in the county of Brant. That's a great statement. This doesn't actually comply with that. And lastly, under planning for its infrastructure, it says the master services plan and environmental assessments. Burford, St. George, and Kingsville are undergoing studies to help residents and council decide what infrastructure is needed to benefit these areas. Residents have only been engaged because of the press release in the Brantford Expositor, and I think some communication has been done. I would really encourage the planning department to share the plans much broader with the community and not have the community have to try to find them, but it should actually be provided to them. In closing, I'm concerned what I've heard. I'm concerned that the plans that are underway, I'm almost concerned that it's too far gone. There's a lot of work that's been done in this field behind my house. And at this point to tell a developer, oh, you can't do that. I hope that the planning committee has the willingness to make that decision if that's the best decision to make. The other thing is I would hope that we have a much more collaborative process if something's going to be built there, whatever it is. We have to engage residents much more effectively than what has been done so far. And with those, I will close my comments and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I think you added a few additional thoughts there, and I appreciate that. Alicia, if we can move on, please.
To the point.
I believe Corey Couture just came into the meeting, so she would be next.
Okay, Corey, where are you?
What the fuck?
Corey? Is Corey there? If somebody could mute their microphone, if it's not Corey, please. Alicia, let's just move on, please.
Okay, next we have John and Melanie Hymans.
John, Melanie,
hello, can you hear me?
Is that John and Melanie?
Yes, it is.
Good. What's your address, John and Melanie?
So we're John and Melanie Haymans, and we live at 280 Highway 5, which would be the other house directly beside the proposed laneway.
Okay, thank you.
Going to the subject lands. I'll do my job. Thank you for all the time you guys have put in tonight. I know this is probably going pretty long, but I will try to be quick and try not to repeat a lot of things. We moved here 2 years ago with the understanding that subject lands was zoned for employment, and there was a possibility of many things, and knew it was up for sale. Never in our wildest dreams did we ever think that it would be 1.3 million square footage of proposed warehouses going in. In my letter to the county and the council, I mentioned the fact that I am a father of a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old on this property, and the idea that the main entrance would be being used would be directly adjacent to my property. With those two running around and growing up terrifies the living crap out of me, to be honest. Highway 5 with the setback that we have doesn't terrify us, but sharing a property line with that many trucks, as it was mentioned, 220 just in the day, nothing was mentioned about the night, but that going in is a terrifying thought for us and our children. It's already been a big thing of training them to be worried about the tractors that used it maybe once or twice a day. It also, I try not to go too much on the traffic, but the fact that we're right where that entrance would be, I wonder, what does traffic look like for the trucks that are coming from the village and needing to enter, turning left? What type of backlog we would see in that situation, almost requiring a left-hand turning lane. the traffic being proposed, you'd almost think that there's going to have to be a stoplight put in there, which I don't even know how you do. A couple things that also worried me through Mr. Webb's presentation, as well as things that have come up. The sound wall location, is that being proposed to be right on the property lines of the northern residences to the property? Is that set back as well? And what really concerned me as it was coming through here, or that concerned us that we have written down, is the mention of this is all proposed, but there's no real tenant. There's no idea of who's going in there, and it boggles my mind to think how accurate projections of traffic, noise, employees, all of these things can be properly projected without any true knowledge of who the business is, what the tenant is. And maybe that's just me being new to this, but I feel like it would be a vast array and differences between certain tenants that could go in there, and that could change things drastically. And I don't know how much that really matters to Pennsylvania in the grand scheme of things. So that's all I have, is not to repeat anyone else. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight.
Thank you for joining us, John. Alicia, next speaker, please.
Next, we have a Paul Stewart.
Paul, are you with us? Paul? No, let's move on.
Next, we have a Greg Oldham.
Greg, are you with us?
I am here. Yes. Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks. Greg, where do you live?
I'm located at 286 Highway 5. My backyard backs right onto the subject land. I would like to start off by addressing Michael Smealy. Is he the Panattoni representative?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Is it possible to have Michael Smealy turn his camera on so that we can actually ensure that he's actually paying attention?
No, I think that's inappropriate. Just carry on with your commentary, please.
Well, I would like to note that he had mentioned that he would like to have dialogue between the residents. All of you counselors look like you're paying attention. If Michael Smealy, who's representing Panattoni, wishes to have dialogue and wishes to have the respect of the people who are opposing this, it would feel more confident to us to have Michael Smealy's face actually showing as a representative of Panattoni. I'll start what I'm saying. Can I go ahead and screen share?
Yes, so you've got a maximum of 10 minutes.
I am going to show here. I'd like to show these illustrations. Are you guys able to see these?
We have, Greg, and just for you to be aware, we all have seen these. So you will be, if you're using them as illustrations, just be aware that we've read your communication to the county.
Okay, I would just like to show obviously the close nature to all of these industrial parks to local highways, obviously. All the industrial development that's in Brant County existing is along 403 mainways. Cambridge, anything is built all along 401 corridor. And I wanted to note that all of these facilities, you don't see neighboring properties anywhere near anything like what we're seeing or what the neighbors would be subject to, including this right here. This is a Panattoni site right here. There are no houses. They're hundreds of meters away. What they're proposing is setting the property 45 meters off of my property line with a 40-foot tall wall. Of course, as everybody has said, we don't want to stop progress, but looking at all of these facilities that are within a 50-kilometer radius from where we are located, it shows that this would be the only development of its kind that would be close to residential properties. Everything else has vast space separating residential properties to the industrial complexes that they're proposing. I will go ahead and stop sharing now. The nearest 403 access point is 11 kilometers. I know you said that you've already read all this. The nearest 401 is 21 kilometers. The nearest Highway 6 access point is 31 kilometers. These all travel through densely populated and urban populated areas. There is a development that's set to grow the village of St. George by roughly around 3,000 homes, I believe, which has been delayed until the infrastructure of St. George is able to accommodate it. The traffic studies that they're proposing, I would assume, I would hope that you guys would have taken all that into account when reviewing this. Highway 24 traffic is already bad, and I know that people have touched on the fact that accidents are common occurrences along 24 highway. I myself, as I was going through school, which all school buses and any St. George residents traveling to Paris District High School cross German School Road, Highway 5 onto Blue Lake Road, Howell Road on a scenic drive on their ways to Paris District High School. I myself was in a school bus accident crossing German School Road with a transport truck on a foggy morning where there is no stoplight at German School Road. There's also no stoplight at Howell Road and Scenic Drive. These are the only options for trucks entering and leaving these facilities. They're also slating that the prime traffic times are going to be 2:18 a.m. and 3:30 p.m., I believe. 3:30 p.m. seems like a pretty common school let out time. So there would be significant school bus traffic, which obviously comes with its risks. Next, I wanted to talk about the monopolizing of the land. Obviously, you guys had talked about the options to zone the property as M3. I personally own a building in the current St. George Industrial Park at 4 Highlander Street, which is zoned M3. What is currently in the St. George Industrial Park is a variety of skilled trades, welders, concrete workers, HVAC, automotive, manufacturing, construction, electrical, etc. I myself own a used car dealership, so it offers a variety of options for people who would like to move to St. George to be property tax payers, to bring their businesses and their business endeavors into this area. Right now, M3 zoning would be more suitable than M2, I believe, as Brant County and the city of Brantford already has plenty of M2 zoning, and only the fringes have M3 zoning, which supports more usage for independent business. It also brings job creation, which generally would probably bring higher paying jobs, which would support residences that live in the village of St. George and Brant County. We don't have low property values in this area, and unfortunately, a high wage is required to be able to live here. So, 150 to 200 jobs that are proposed, it's a pretty low number. The next thing that I would like to propose concerns about the actual building and what they're proposing. I know James Webb had addressed that they have done a lot of studies and met the minimum requirements of what the county has laid out or the province of Ontario have laid out. The minimum requirements are simply inadequate due to the close nature that the properties sit to the neighboring properties. They're suggesting constructing a 2.1 meter concrete wall that sits right on my property line. I will raise the point that transport trucks sit 13 feet off the ground and have exhaust stacks that do not sit below a 2.1 meter concrete sound wall. So a 2.1 meter concrete sound wall would do absolutely nothing to mitigate noise pollution. The close nature of the building to all of these properties, it would be impossible to address the light pollution. And I know that you guys have mentioned that you did light studies and have tried to, propose aiming the lights downwards and towards the properties, it's simply going to negatively impact us anyway, regardless of how they try. The 3-lane truck entrance that they're proposing in between 282B Highway 5 and where John Heyman lives will dump the trucks out onto Highway 5 where there is no stoplight, there's no turning lanes, there's no exit lanes, there's no safe opening for transport trucks to pull out and get up to speed in either direction. Traffic is constantly moving at 80 kilometers an hour or faster along Highway 5. And anybody who lives in St. George, the main urban areas that we go to are Brantford and Cambridge, which Highway 5 leading to 24 are our only options. So the other proposal that Panattoni has proposed is that the roadway for the vehicles runs directly along the back of these residential properties that run along the north end of Highway 5. As I said before, but the light pollution, it would be impossible to mitigate the noise that this is going to bring when you have over 300 trucks passing by and going to the west side of the building, of Building 1, the loading docks. It's going to be impossible to mitigate the noise with whatever kind of wall they propose.
Greg, your 10 minutes is almost up, so if you can close up.
Yeah, this is mainly addressing directly to Panattoni and to the county. I hope that you guys take this into account when we move into the dialogue. And I want to state that we do want to remain reasonable when dealing with both the county and Panattoni. I hope that all the neighbors agree. We don't want to be confrontational, but we do have many suggestions of things that would help and would make the neighbors along Highway 5. And if it goes through, there's going to be guaranteed negative impacts, but to mitigate them even further than what Panattoni is suggesting, the minimum requirements that are offered by the province or the county just simply aren't going to be enough due to the circumstance of the houses being so close. Some suggestions would be having the loading docks running along any south side.
Greg, if I may, I've got to be conscious of all the other people that want to speak. We do have all of these, all of your commentary in written form, I believe. So believe me, it is being considered. It will get full consideration. Thank you for your contribution. Do appreciate it. Thank you. Alicia, if we could move on, please.
Yes, I do believe that we now have Mr. Corey Couture who is able to speak.
Okay, Corey, third time of asking, do join us. Where do you live? Where do you live?
At 38 West Street in St. George.
Do carry on, please.
Thank you. I won't mention the traffic issues as they more or less have already been touched upon rather well. What I will personally add is I would much rather see the appropriate amounts of housing and small business space be added to this area to potentially aid in the housing shortage that we're seeing as well, and build the strong family atmosphere that St. George currently has, and then hopefully you could expand on in the future with these types of addition to that land, and having smaller businesses be able to thrive a little bit better as well, rather than giving it all out to one giant warehouse. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate your contribution. Thank you,
John.
Alicia.
Next, we have a David and Betty Lou Warmington.
David, Betty Lou, are you with us? David?
Sorry. Hi, it's Betty Lou. I'm sorry, I just wanted to go on record as attending so that I would receive notice of any future meetings or conversations, communications with the builder. I live at 54 Beverly Street West in St. George.
Okay, then
again, my concerns echo those of those already spoken. It is a traffic nightmare with what goes in the speed of trucks, transports. There is no concern for the school right across the street. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty Lou. Alicia. Alicia, next one.
Okay, next we have a Raymond Archer.
Raymond.
Yes,
you spoke earlier.
I did. And just I want to thank the council for this evening. I think it's been a great meeting. Again, I don't want to be repetitive. I will just state that I've been a resident of St. George for the last 2 years. I live at 8 Beverly Street East. It's a lovely village. 20 years prior to that, I was in Burlington, and I grew up in Toronto. The older I get, the more I appreciate living here. This is a gem, and what I want to just, I'm very much aligned with the residents of St. George. I will say, and again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I will say that already we have issues, which I have complained to Brant County about before. I've also gone to the OPP. We already have issues with significant truck traffic through the village. Because of where I live, I can tell you my bedroom faces Beverly Street East. And I can tell you that at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, trucks are going through the village. It's 50 kilometers per hour. Trucks are going through the village at significant speeds. And I can tell just from the sound itself. I want to just applaud John McAlpine for his comments earlier. I think infrastructure is critical. I really don't see a project of this magnitude going through. It doesn't fit with the nature of this village. Really, I think we should be looking at infrastructure first and foremost before any decisions are made. And again, I just don't think this project suits the community. I don't think it, from a job perspective, I don't think it's really warranted. That most of those jobs will be low-paying jobs, and unfortunately, it's expensive to live in this community. And I really do think that that honestly, I think what we should be looking at, and I've even suggested this before, is no truck traffic through the village whatsoever. There should be some sort of a bypass. And again, I get back to speeds. We have seniors, we have young children, and unfortunately. It's not just truck traffic, but with the proposal for this project, there will be a significant number of trucks increasing usage of Highway 5 or Beverly Street going through St. George. Main Street will also will probably see an increase in truck traffic as well. So, overall, again, I just want to say that I'm very much aligned with the residents of St. George. I really do hope that that this project does not go through. I don't think it it fits with our community. I understand progress. I understand growth, and you know what? That makes perfect sense. But you know what? If we want jobs, Paris is close, Brantford is close, Cambridge is close. You know what? Those are the communities and areas that already have substantial industrial, complexes and businesses where you can go to find jobs if you need them. So I think we have a lovely little village, and I just want to say it's been a pleasure to live here the last couple of years. But I do think that we just want to make sure. I think that if as we grow, and we will, and progress it'll happen, but it has to be for the right reasons, and it has to fit the community. And I think that we need to think about that in the long run. So, anyways, I certainly appreciate the opportunity. It's been a pleasure, and I just want to say to all the residents that have contributed, good for you. Very much aligned, and I hope that the council will take all of our feedback into consideration and make the right decisions, because again, growth is it will happen, but it has to be for the right reasons, and infrastructure is critical.
Raymond, thank you. I appreciate all your input there and your experience as a resident further down the road. Alicia, do we have any more speakers?
Yes, we do. Next, we have a Laurie Moosh.
Laurie, where are you?
This is Laurie's husband, Jim. Hello, everyone.
Okay.
I think everything's been covered. I think the neighbors in the area and everyone in St. George and the councilman have brought up a lot of the concerns, and I think we're covered off on our written submission. Again, the biggest thing is the fit. and really looking at a long term for St. George. It's been covered off by everyone, but really what is the best fit for our community? And I think many of the residents have touched on that. So from our end, I think we're covered off. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Just before you go, what's your address?
272 Highway 5, one of the properties backing onto the proposal.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Alicia.
Next, we have a Steve Sickle.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I own the property at 15 Highlander that's south and east of the proposed development. My only concern is that with the stormwater management system on the property, what's the rainfall equivalent that system will hold, and will it drain before another storm occurs? Because if it's full and then we get another 2-inch rain, most of that property is going to be roof and pavement. Where is it going to end up? It's going to end up in the stormwater management pond, and then where? It'll end up on my property. So that's my concern. I would like to know some numbers before. I know we're in the preliminary stages, so take that into consideration, please.
Yeah, we will. Steve, thank you for staying with us, and eventually Steves do get onto the screen, even if there's Steve Sickles rather than Steve Schmitz. So thank you for coming tonight. Do appreciate it. Alicia.
Next, we have an Anna Michalski.
Anna, are you with us? Anna? Okay, let's move on, Alicia.
Okay, next we have a Sue Bailey.
Sue, are you with us? I can't see everybody on my screen, so you may be on screen 2 or 3. No, let's keep going.
I do not have anyone else on my list to speak on this item.
Thank you, Alicia. Well, we've been through the list of people that had registered. Is there anybody else on the call that would like to make a comment on this application? I'll ask a second time, and I'll ask a third time. And at that point, I will close the public meeting and pass the matter back to committee for consideration. David.
Just accept it, please, as information.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Joan. Any additional comments? If not, I would make the comment that there were a lot of common issues brought out there that are virtually impossible for us to answer tonight. Clearly it needs a lot of work, but it also needs a lot of engagement with our St. George community. So I think that clearly we should accept it for information, but I think staff need to think about how we can reach back out to these many people that spoke to us. Now, I can't remember a meeting when we had so much public input, and I think it behooves us to go back as quickly as we can. And I think it may be possible to tie it together with the planned meeting that Panettone are thinking of. So at that, let's call the vote on the motion in front of us to receive for information. All those in favor? Motion carried. I'm going to suggest a 5-minute break to allow people to leave us, to allow for other things to happen. And we'll be back at 8:45. Alicia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I think we can probably get going again. Thank you for all that logistical work there. It was quite a challenge. Okay, welcome back, everybody. That brought us to the end of the public hearings to receive information. We now move on to item 8, which are public hearings under the Planning Act to consider staff recommendations. We have 6 in front of us. The first one is in regard of Albert Judge Drive, and Dan, you're leading us on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just waiting for my screens to catch up here. I can hear my computer thinking very hard.
I think.
Okay, I think I'm there.
You are there, Dan, yeah.
So this is a communications tower application for the applicants
being Shared Tower Inc. In care of Land Squared for a property located at 1 Albert Judge Drive in Burford. The staff are recommending this evening that one of two things. One, confirmation that the necessary public consultation has been completed or is being completed, and B, that in this particular application that the preferred location guidelines are being met for the communications tower as relates to our communications tower and communication antenna preferred location protocol. So the subject lands identified on your screen, highlighted in blue. We are located in Burford at Albert Judge Drive, south of Bryan Drive. The official plan designation as previously presented is within the employment lands, and the zoning is heavy industrial M3. We also have urban residential land uses to the north and natural heritage land uses to the west. The proposal itself, proposing a 50-meter tall steel self-supported tower within a chained enclosure. As part of the application, the applicants provided the site selection report and a site plan, and more recently a letter of concurrence request. And I know our applicant will elaborate a little bit more. But what that letter of concurrence or package includes is a summary of the public consultation, any concerns or comments that were received and how they were addressed. And it also summarizes this timeline here where we did have the information or the application was circulated internally for departmental circulation and comments. The neighborhood meeting was held on December 2nd, and a subsequent information meeting with this committee held on December 7th. So reviewing the site selection protocol, we know that due to the height of the tower being 50 meters, the preferred setback from residential uses and natural heritage features would be 150 meters. And we can see that the tower is providing in excess of 150 meters in both from residential uses and natural heritage features. So to conclude, again, the application has completed the necessary public consultation with the public and the County of Brant. And this application for 1 Albert Judge Drive is in keeping with the preferred location guidelines as outlined in the telecommunications protocol. Happy to answer any questions. And again, our agent for the applicant is with us this evening as well.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for Dan? Seeing none, thank you, Dan. We'll move on to the agent or the applicant of the agent, or the agent of the applicant. If you have anything you'd like to add, please go ahead. If you could just introduce yourself.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm Tracy Peelan-Abbs on behalf of Land Squared, which is the agent on behalf of the applicant Shared Tower Inc. Again, the property owner is our landlord. We just lease space, and then of course we lease space on the tower to telecommunication providers like TELUS, Rogers, Bell. The only thing I wanted to add is I confirm that during the public open house, there were no people who attended, and during the public information session with the county, there was no attendees as well. So we've not been presented with any concerns on this proposed tower. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any questions for Tracy? Seeing none, thank you. I'll move into the public part of this for this item. Are there any members of the public, Alicia, that would like to speak to this?
There is no one on my list to speak on this item.
Okay, thank you. But I will ask in case there's somebody online. This is the second time of asking if somebody would like to speak to this item. And I'll ask a third and final time. And hearing and seeing nobody, I will close the public part of this meeting and pass the matter back to committee for consideration. John Pierce.
Move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seconded by John Wheat. Thank you, John. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried. This will, I don't know whether we have to take this to the council to get this ratified, but if we follow the normal process, that will happen in a matter of 3 weeks from now, Tracy. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2. You're on again, Dan?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is another communications tower application, this one for 447 Baptist Church Road, dealing with Shared Tower Inc., again with Land Squared, representing the applicant. Similar format, recommendation, again, confirming that the public consultation has been completed. And in this particular case, the preferred location guidelines are not being met, and I can identify exactly why on the next few slides. So the subject lands, again, identified in blue, located on the south side of Baptist Church Road and east of Mulligan Road. The subject lands are located within the agricultural land use designation as well as the natural heritage designation, and that's also reflected in the zoning as well. The proposed tower location is identified in red, just west of the Quonset hut located on the subject lands. In this case, the application had requested a 65-meter tall steel structure within a chain link secured fence. Similar timeline as previous applications, internal, external circulation, neighborhood meeting, and information meeting with this committee have been completed. This graphic just identifies where the neighboring residents are in yellow, and the proposed tower location is being the blue dot. 3 times the tower height would require 195 meters from the natural heritage feature and the residential use. I note that the residential use is located, the closest residential use is located approximately 110 meters away from in the west direction from the dwelling on the abutting property, who we have received some comments from throughout this process. The tower itself is located 30 meters from the natural heritage feature, and however, I note comments from both the GRCA and our environmental planner have identified no concerns with this tower location. So in terms of the recommendation this evening, again, the necessary public consultation with the county and the public have been completed, and the recommendation concludes that the tower location is not in accordance with the preferred location guidelines as outlined in the protocol, and this is specifically related to the proximity to the abutting dwelling to the west of the property. Happy to answer any questions, and again, Tracy is with us as well.
Thank you, Dan. Questions to Dan from committee? Seeing none, thank you, Dan. Oh, sorry, Joan, you just flicked back onto screen. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Dan. If we move this tower 195 meters as suggested in our protocol, would that put the tower out in the middle of a farm field?
Through Mr. Chair to Councillor Gatward, the subject lands, as you can see within your package, they're not very large. There may be some room to locate that structure 195 meters away. That may result in moving closer to the natural heritage feature. It also would result in the tower being located in the middle of the agricultural field.
And in your opinion, is that a better place in the middle of a field and closer to the natural heritage? Or is the current proposed site a better location, even though it doesn't meet the 195 guideline?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in my professional opinion, when reviewing the protocol, the protocol just identifies the setback distances required based on the tower height to surrounding uses. When you're dealing with, putting a structure in the middle of a farm field, I think it's always more preferred. In my opinion, that we can cluster the towers with any buildings so that any obstructions are clustered together, and the visual impact of that tower is kind of has less of an impact. It also would reduce the amount of agricultural land that we're taking out of production.
Thank you, Dan. I'd agree with that.
Thank you, John. Any additional questions to Dan? Seeing none, then we'll move to Tracy again. Your opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity again. For this particular file, we want to work, and we are definitely listening to the concerns that were brought up at the public open house and the public meeting. We have taken a look at various alternative locations on this property. We have seen that to comply with the setback, it has to be moved further south. But like Dan mentioned, that it gets closer to the natural heritage feature. It also increases the visibility of the tower because the property owner to the west will see it from their backyard, as opposed to where it is now within the cluster of existing buildings. It can be buffered through some existing trees that are located in between the property and the existing home to the west. So it's important that the committee understands that we are trying to work out some alternatives, and we have taken a look at different locations. Again, your protocol says the word preferred. It's not a restriction. It's not a requirement. It's a little different than a Planning Act application. In Dan's report, he did state that it's supported by the PPS, the growth plan, your OP, your zoning, they all permit this type of use. It's your protocol. It's just a preferred location. We have taken a look at other preferred locations, but this just seems to be the best location. Caledonia is underserviced, and it's important that we get this placed where it has the best and maximum amount of coverage. I do want to report back that I was left with a few questions from the public meeting and the public open house, and I want to be able to bring back to the committee because there were questions you had asked. With respect to NAV Canada and whether there was a light on the tower, we have confirmed that it is a decision of Transport Canada and NAV Canada. So at this time, we don't know if there's going to be a light or not. That would be a regulation that they would do. What is the hydro height was a question. The existing hydro corridor, the towers are on average 100 meters tall, and they're usually 5 times the width of a proposed telecommunication tower. And it should be noted that there is a tower right next to this property owner to the west, approximately 75 meters from that home. How many households will this tower provide service? We did do an assessment of the number of homes in the area, and taking a very low estimate, between 2 to 2.5 kilometer radius is what you would get. Depending on the service provider, sometimes they get 5, but based on a 2.5 kilometer, there was about 50 rural residents that would benefit from this tower. In addition to all the agricultural lands, a lot of the farmers are using this technology in their farm equipment, and that will also take into consideration both their business and the people who are residents in the area. Additional information about the nearest tower. We did note that there was a tower and the address is 820 Shave Road, and that's on the city of Hamilton side near Ancaster. So that tower is west of Shaver and south of Garner Road West. So that's the nearest tower, and it's approximately 7 kilometers away. So that's why there's that gap, because they only cover around 2 to 5 kilometers in total. There was a question about the silo tower, if it was considered. It did not show up in any of our tower mapping locations due to the fact that there's probably only local internet survivors or providers on that tower. So we would not be taking that into consideration because it's not any of the larger telecommunication tower providers. So in summary, again, we did take a look at moving the tower. We would like to propose, and I do have authorization from Shared Tower Network to reduce the height of the tower from 65 meters to 60 meters. That will then reduce the setback to a new 180 meter setback. Again, at 3 times the tower is the preferred tower. We'd still be too close to the natural heritage feature, but again, we are outside of the regulated area, and there were no concerns about that reduction. Yes, and I think those are all my notes. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate you giving answers to questions we've asked you already. Any further questions to Tracy? Seeing none, thank you, Tracy. Stay with us. I'll open this up to the public now. Alicia, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak?
We do, Mr. Chairman. We have a Colleen and Matthew Kelly.
Thank you. Colleen, welcome, and Matthew, welcome. If you could just give us your address and then carry on from there.
Sure. It's 431 Baptist Church Road, and we are the immediate neighbors to the proposed build site.
Thank you.
I have spoke with you both before. I appreciate the chance to speak again, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I know it's been a long evening for you. We've been sitting here with you listening to all of the very interesting conversations that have been going on. I am just going to take a quick moment to share my screen with you. I have created just a small outline of the concerns that we have. I know you all had a chance to review the document that we sent back in December. Many concerns that we offered at the time, we provided citations for those concerns. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review those. One thing I would like to comment on, in today's meeting, Tracy just now said that Caledonia was the underserved population. In the information session and in our previous meetings, the concern was a gap in cellular service for drivers. So I'm not 100% sure who we actually are trying to provide service to, but the concerns that my husband and I have are, I feel that they're well placed, and I know that Tracy mentioned that it is a preferred as opposed to a firm guidelines, but I still feel that this is potentially going to set a very dangerous precedent. So just to outline, our main concern is the loss of property enjoyment. I am certain that there will be security cameras put on this tower, which would be a violation of our expectations of privacy within our own property guidelines and limits. The structure, although we know that currently NAV Canada is saying that they have not finalized whether or not there will be lights on the structure. When I did my research, it looks like almost every cellular structure, tower structure, does require lights eventually. The structure itself will be seen through the east side of our home from our kitchen, our dining room, and our upper hallway. Our kitchen and dining room are where we spend a good majority of our time, and we would be seeing that constantly. That area is not protected by the trees, as Tracy indicated. And then the proposed tower will be built directly adjacent to our property line, yet no one has spoken to any accommodations. For example, adding a fence to increase the division between our properties or tree planting. Lowering the height will only put it even further into our sight line. We are also concerned with environmental issues such as light and noise pollution, since more communication devices are expected to be added to the tower once it's installed. And of course, the ongoing water displacement issues that I included photographs of in the December meeting that would cause extensive damage to our hazelnut and truffle orchard that we established a number of years ago. We also are concerned about lower property values. We did confirm with 2 real estate agents that the expected reduction in home resale value would be approximately 20%. So aside from the resale value, this also is a significant portion of our retirement portfolio. And of course, the number of households affected. I only found out on Sunday that there was a proposal to lower the tower height by 5 meters. I'm curious as to what that new range of coverage and the estimated households would now be. Is that really worth putting a huge tower up just for the affected homes? At this point, 50, but I'm assuming with the reduction in the tower height, there would be less homes that would be in that 2-kilometer radius. And that with a rural area with so little road traffic as it is, do we really require supported cellular service? So in closing, I really want to reiterate the fact that we are not against infrastructure progress. We know that it's needed, but we really feel that rural farmland is not the place for it. We feel the approval of the project would really set an unfortunate precedent that could allow towers to go up all over rural areas in the county. Brant would no longer be seen as a haven to raise families and retire in quiet comfort, instead a landscape dotted with metal towers and flashing lights. Again, I appreciate the time and the being allowed to speak on this. I don't know if you have any further questions for me, but I'll go give back control of the screen now.
Thank them for their contributions.
Thank you, Colleen and Matthew. Does committee have any questions for Colleen and Matthew? Perhaps while we've got Tracy here, any answers you want to give to questions raised by Colleen, Tracy, that you heard there that you hadn't heard before?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So just to respond to some of the concerns, there is no noise that comes from the towers. There's no generators, there's no bells or alarms. There are no cameras on the cellular devices. There is just a fenced compound area, which is gated and locked. We can consider tree planting as well around the compound area to help hide some of the cabinets. We do that often. We will address water displacement, possibly even improve the situation, as we'll do an environmental review and a lot drainage plan and a ESC. The lowering the property value, that is a challenge and a debate that many have, but with COVID and more people working from home, it's actually now become a increase in value as more people now are looking for homes where they can get good coverage. And yes, this will accommodate for road traffic, people who live in the radius, and farmers. And there will be a slight reduction by reducing it by the 5 meters, but not a significant reduction. I'm happy to answer any further follow-up questions you might have.
Thank you, Tracy. At that point, I'm going to, well, Alicia, do we have anybody else that would like to speak? Sorry, I should have asked that.
We do not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, I will ask the people that are on screen, if any member of the public wishes to ask a question, now is your opportunity. I'll ask a third time, and hearing and seeing none, I will then refer the matter back to committee for decision. How does committee wish to decide on this? Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the recommendation and I would like to speak to it.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Mayor Bailey, thank you. Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm really torn between this decision on this one, which way is the right way to go. I believe cell towers are needed, and because it is an integral part of the rural communities now for internet service and things like that. And I can tell you, in the last election that was held almost 4 years ago, was that was one of the biggest concerns of the, as I still call that, the lower end of Onondaga Township, was poor internet connections. And if we can help do something to help improve that, and I know we're not going to have fiber everywhere, but we need proper cell towers to make this work. So I'm torn on which way to vote on this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Would anybody else like to comment? Robert, and then David.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say that the actual approval is not the authority of the County of Brant, if I understand it correctly. The recommendation is basically a statement of fact that we've concluded the consultation and that it does not meet the protocol. So it's just not saying that we approve it or not approve it. It's just stating facts that are facts. So I cannot see not supporting the recommendation, which is a statement of fact. It's not saying whether we approve or disapprove, but that's not up to us. So I'll support the recommendation based on that thinking.
Thank you, Robert. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had some computer problems, so I missed the first part of it. But did in their discussions, and as Councilor Chambers alluded to, we aren't the final arbiter of whether it goes ahead or not. So, if we approve the recommendation to that it didn't follow the process, how does that impact the proposed tower location? What would be the next steps? I'm just wondering how impactful our decision is on this.
Yeah, I think I'd ask our planning team to answer that one. Dan or Matt?
Through Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'm going to throw it over to Tracy. She is the expert here.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Like we did with the tower on Pleasant Park area, you gave us an opportunity to continue working with administration and allowing us to find a spot or reduce the tower further or try to come closer to your protocol. So we'd certainly be happy if you defer this and give us that opportunity to have more discussions with staff, and we can bring something back to you. So I definitely want to be able to point to that. What we are looking for from the committee and then ratification by council is a letter of concurrence or non-concurrence. Essentially what you're doing is supporting it or not supporting it. Although the wording of your recommendations are a statement of facts, administration is going to have to put that into a letter. That gets put into that submission to Industry Canada. They can still make that final decisions without your support or not. However, we like to always have the local or upper tier government in support of this tower, because it's you who got to address some of your concerns and provide for proper coverage for your residents. So what we're looking for, and we hope that we would get your support. If not, we would be happy to continue working with administration on finding a suitable location.
Is that a good enough answer, David?
Yeah, a comment, if I could, Mr. Chair. I'll echo what Councillor Coleman said. It is a little frustrating because I get 2 to 3 calls and or emails a week about people who are having very frustrated with lack of internet access, and I think a lot of people around this table know that because they've referred those people to me. So it is frustrating, and you know, it was said that these really don't belong in a rural setting, yet it's the rural setting that is the ones lacking the internet, whether it's to run the farming operation or just you know, to have the kids go to Zoom or school or whatever. So yeah, I agree, Councilor Coleman. It's a hard decision. We want to promote high speed. In fact, we've even struck a committee with our Chamber of Commerce, local Chamber of Commerce, to do that. So to not have these proceed, like I say, very, very, very frustrating. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, you want to come in?
I just a comment. I'm supportive of the tower. So if the recommendation goes to a vote and isn't deferred, I guess I'll be voting against it, even though it is a statement of fact, in just a way to show some support. I'm one of those people who've sent people to David recently who have had a lot of trouble with their internet. And I'm also an educator in my full-time work. And I see students from my rural communities at a disadvantage because of a lack of adequate internet service. And fiber helps, absolutely. But, you know, we have business owners and students and others who have to utilize cell phone service in order to participate in the activities of their daily life, often in terms of safety. And in terms of education, I am, you know, I understand people are in favor of progress until it's right behind them. But by the same token, I've lived, my family's lived next to radio towers, 3 or 4 major big ones with the flashing lights, et cetera. And it wasn't a big deal in my experience growing up that way. So sometimes the anticipation of a thing is worse than the thing, especially when you read all the worst case scenarios. And I can be very sympathetic towards that. And it is difficult in that regard, but I think our job is to support the public good, and this is the future, and this is the public good, in my opinion, overall. So I won't be supporting the recommendation if it comes up. If it's deferred, I would support a deferral.
Joan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, there seems to be some confusion to whether we support or don't support. There's a recommendation, it's a statement. Maybe what we need to do is, or could we amend the last line of B that says that it's not in accordance with section 4.3 preferred location guidelines of the communication tower and communication antenna preferred location protocol. However, council supports the location as being the least obtrusive in the neighborhood, something to that effect.
Are you making that an amendment? Are you moving that amendment?
If you want me to, Mr. Chairman, if that's acceptable to do that. Am I making it clearer for everybody?
I think so. Do you have a seconder for that amendment? Steve, thank you. Any comment on, any discussion on the amendment? If not, John, you go ahead. John Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to support the amendment. I think the deferral is the way to go here, and we'll see how this amendment goes, and then I'll put in the motion for deferral, because I believe we've got Tracy here that wants to work with this. So I think it's upon us to give her the time to do that.
Okay, so well, we have an amendment motion on the table, which we should vote on. If we defeat it, then we can move on. So let me call the vote on the amendment. Those in favor? Those against? Motion defeated. So we're back to the original recommendation on the table, but discussion of a deferral. John?
I would move that we defer this for a cycle to allow some more discussions on this.
Do we have a seconder? Mark, thank you. In terms of protocol, do we have to take the original recommendation off the table, Alicia?
Since it has been moved and seconded already, you would need to dispose of that original motion.
Okay, would the members that moved and seconded it wish to withdraw it? Yes, thank you, Councillor Coleman.
I would support that, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So now we are left with a motion to defer. I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you. And Tracy, thank you for willing to work with us. I appreciate that you would like to have council support to this, and I trust you will work diligently with our staff and with Colleen and Matthew. Thank you. Okay, I'll move along. Item 8.3, which is 729 Mount Pleasant Road. Amanda, I think you're doing this one.
That is correct. Just can you confirm that you can see my screen?
I can, and thank you for staying with us.
You're welcome. All right. So thank you to the chair. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment has been received for the lands municipally known as 729 Mount Pleasant Road. The subject lands are located on the west side of Mount Pleasant Road and are located within the settlement area of Mount Pleasant and are partially municipally serviced. In regards to the proposal, the applicant is seeking a rezoning specifically for a reduced frontage of 17 meters to facilitate a severance for an additional residential building lot. The applicant is also proposing to place a holding on the severed parcel due to capacity restrictions in Mount Pleasant. In regards to the official plan, the subject lands are located within the secondary urban settlement area of Mount Pleasant and are designated as suburban residential. The suburban residential designation contemplates for limited residential development. And then in regards to the zoning bylaw, excuse me, the subject lands are currently zoned as suburban residential, with the applicant proposing a site-specific provision on the severed parcel for the reduced frontage and to place a holding due to capacity restrictions. Through public circulation, no public comments have been received. And then in terms of my recommendation, I'm recommending approval of the application, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members may have.
Thank you, Amanda. Does committee have questions for Amanda? Seeing none, thank you. We'll then move on to the applicant or the agent of the applicant. Who is representing the applicant?
I do not have any agent or applicant registered to speak on this item.
Thank you, Alicia. Then we'll move right along to the public part of this item. I'll open it up to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak to this item?
I do not have anyone registered to speak.
Okay, thank you, Alicia. Well, I'll ask again for the sake of people that may be on the call if they would like to speak to this item. And I'll ask a third and final time. Seeing none, I'll close the public part of this meeting and hand the question back to committee to decide. John Wheat?
Move it.
Thank you. Seconded by Brian Coleman. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried. Thank you. This will come forward to the next council meeting. Moving right along, again, Amanda, 8.4, 184 Highway 53.
Yeah, and can you just confirm you can see my presentation?
We can, thank you.
Excellent. All right, so thank you through the chair. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment has been received for the lands municipally known as 184 Highway number 53. In regards to the proposal, the applicant, the applicant is seeking to rezone a portion of the subject lands in order to facilitate a lot line adjustment with the abutting business. The applicant is specifically proposing to rezone an area of approximately 442 square meters from residential hamlet to general commercial. The applicant is also proposing a site-specific provision on the retained parcel to recognize a deficient lot area. In regards to the official plan, the subject lands are designated as hamlets and villages. The hamlets and villages designation contemplates for residential uses and for commercial uses such as the existing automotive garage on the abutting parcel. In regards to the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned residential hamlet, whereas the abutting parcel, the benefiting parcel, is zoned as general commercial. The applicant is specifically proposing to rezone an area of 442 square meters in order to facilitate the lot line adjustment. The applicant is also proposing a site-specific provision on the retain to recognize a deficient lot area of 2,394 square meters, whereas a minimum of 3,000 is required. Through public circulation, no comments have been received. And then in terms of my recommendation, I'm recommending approval of the application, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members may have.
Thank you, Amanda. Do we have any questions for Amanda? Seeing none, then I'll move on to the applicant or the agent of the applicant. I guess that's you, Bob.
Yes, thank you. I really don't have much to add to the application. I think it's pretty straightforward. And I know it's been a long night, so I'm just here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Does committee have any questions for Bob? Seeing none, then I'll move on to the public part of this item. Alicia, do we have anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this item?
I do not have anyone registered to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. And for the sake of process, if there's anybody on the line that wishes to speak, now is the time to do it. I'll ask a third and final time for public input. Seeing none, I'll close the public part of the meeting and hand the matter back to committee for decision. Mayor Bailey.
Approval, please.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Coleman. Any further commentary? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Motion carried. It will go to council, Bob, at the end of the month for ratification.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amanda, you're a busy lady this evening, late in the evening. Over to you for 571 Mount Pleasant Road.
Again, for the third time, can you just confirm you can see my presentation?
I can, thank you.
Excellent. All right, so thank you through the chair. An application for a zoning bylaw amendment has been received for the lands municipally known as 571 Mount Pleasant Road. The subject lands are located on the east side of Mount Pleasant Road and are located within the settlement area of Mount Pleasant and are partially municipally serviced. In regards to the proposal, the applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from agricultural to suburban residential in order to facilitate a residential severance. The applicant is also proposing a holding on the sever due to capacity restrictions. In regards to the official plan, the subject lands are located within the secondary urban settlement area of Mount Pleasant and are designated as suburban residential. The suburban residential designation does contemplate for limited residential development. And then in regards to the zoning bylaw, the subject lands are currently zoned as agricultural, and the applicant is proposing to rezone them from agricultural to suburban residential and to place a holding on the proposed severed lot. And then through public circulation, one comment was received during the information portion seeking clarification on MDS. I did provide a response during that meeting and in my report. And then in terms of my recommendation, I'm recommending approval of the application, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee members may have.
Thank you, Amanda. Does committee have any questions for Amanda? Seeing none, thank you, Amanda. We'll move then on to the applicant or the agent of the applicant. Is the agent or the applicant represented tonight, Alicia?
I do believe Brandon Adeli from Watrous Holden is here.
Hello, council. I believe Ms. Brzezinski covered everything wonderfully. I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any questions for the agent of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. I'll move on to the public part on this item. Alicia, is anybody from the public that wishes to speak to this?
I do not have anyone on my list to speak on this item.
Thank you. Well, in case there's somebody online and they wish to speak, now is the time to do it. And I will ask for a third time if anybody would like to speak. Seeing and hearing nobody, I will close the public part of this item and hand the matter back to committee for consideration. John Pierce moving and seconded by Joan. Thank you very much. Any further commentary? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried. This will come to council at the end of the month. And that brings us to the last item in section 8, and it's housekeeping amendment. And Brandon, you have a tough shift now to do. I hope we can stay with you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to confirm you first that you can hear me all right.
We can.
Great.
Yes, thank you as well for your patience this evening. So I'll try and keep my presentation short and sweet and to the point here. Let me just share my screen. All right. And I'll just confirm that you can see the presentation.
Not yet, but it's coming.
Okay.
Now we can. Thank you.
Perfect. That's great. So good evening to the Planning and Development Committee and members of the public. I'm just sharing my screen here to do a brief presentation on this project, being our 7th housekeeping project to the county's comprehensive zoning bylaw. So first initiated in July of 2021 last year, the proposed amendments for this project were previously presented in November as well of 2021. And since then, we prepared the recommendation for this project as it is before you this evening and as part of your package. So what we've done is incorporated council, public, and stakeholder feedback, as well as any further research that we've done on these proposed amendments, and we're recommending them for adoption to improve the zoning bylaw's overall conformity and function moving forward. So there were several topics that we've included in this project, and I won't go through all of them in depth this evening as they're briefly touched upon in the report, but as previously presented, they're all intended to improve how the bylaw does function. And the changes will address things that we've noticed during application reviews, enforcement issues, and overall conformity with our official plan with provincial policy. So this particular housekeeping project included such things as reviewed refinements to the natural heritage system, done in collaboration with Michelle, our environmental planner, and there are local conservation authorities. We've also included improvements to agriculture-related permissions, like surplus farm dwelling severance requirements, farm production outlet permissions, farm labor housing permissions, and definitions for prime agricultural lands. There are proposed permissions, and you'll see some of them on this table here. One of them being to help us better evaluate temporary tent structures. They're broadly approached under one standard in the bylaw, and this has led to some confusion in that implementation. So we're proposing to separate out different requirements for different uses of the tents, things like private functions and backyard weddings, tents for a temporary commercial event, like a pop-up parking lot sale, and then tents for, say, a temporary carport structure. Many of these uses are common around the county of Brant, and we do permit them. It's just that they aren't directly addressed in the bylaw, and we're adding some further clarification. We've also proposed an update to the requirements for legal non-conforming structures, and this has been done to better align several definitions in the bylaw, just to add some clarity. And it will also help assist property owners and staff know exactly when changes to legal non-conforming structures need permission from the Committee of Adjustment. There's also some minor changes proposed for model homes and temporary sales trailer permissions. So instead of the broad brush approach that it takes currently, we're suggesting that we separate the requirements out to address permissions for sales trailers and for model homes separately. And this will help staff and development stakeholders ensure that constructing these types of structures is done at the most appropriate time. We're proposing to add further standards and requirements to our ARU program. And this is being done to provide some better rules to achieve the ARU policies of the province and of our official plan. ARUs are really meant to be secondary to a principal house on the property. And we're proposing some guidelines that will better guide this in rural areas, specifically limiting the development area and requiring the use of the same driveway entrance as the main house to help achieve the intended outcomes of the policies. We've also added some flexibility, as we heard that was a concern from residents with respect to locating the external ARU within proximity to the principal house. So recognizing that there may be developed areas of the property already, we're proposing that if there's an existing cluster of buildings on the property, that would be an appropriate place to evaluate if an ARU could go there as well. There's also a consistent 30-meter buffer requirement from the NH, or the natural heritage lands, and our woodland and vegetation lands being proposed. And that's something that exists already. It's just that we want that to be upfront and consistently applied across the board. Shipping containers have also been on the table for discussion with this project. We've been able to collect a lot of helpful feedback. It's really shaped part of what we were proposing with this particular, these particular amendments. So just with respect to public engagement on this topic, we did do 2 separate kind of online polls that were posted to get some high-level feedback from residents. We got quite a few responses to them. You'll see the results here showing that with respect to the first poll asking if these types of structures should be permitted, most responded saying that they should, considering uses beyond just the intermodal freight uses for things like sheds, pools, and tiny homes. But then recognizing as well that we know there are concerns with these types of structures, we also asked about those concerns, what people would be most concerned about permitting, especially in residential areas. And the most common concern obviously was aesthetic and upkeep. And as we discussed with our previous report, the zoning bylaw isn't necessarily the best mechanism to control aesthetic and upkeep. So what we've done is we work together with our bylaw enforcement staff to ensure that the update that we're proposing with these amendments is done in line with an update to the property standards bylaw. And that would ensure that the proper enforcement mechanisms are in place to work between the zoning bylaw and the property standards bylaw. So these conversations will continue as we consider other future tools that we can use to regulate things like aesthetic and upkeep, especially with regards to shipping containers. And we'll be looking to set up some more of those tools through our new official plan. And with respect to what we're proposing to change with these requirements related to shipping containers, we've looked at some comments that you had provided previously as well. So addressing non-complying structures, broadening permissions, but doing it in an appropriate manner, making sure the proper restrictions are in place for the temporary structures, and then looking at aesthetic control. So what we've done is we proposed a simplification to the requirements. So it's clear to a property owner when, where, and how they can use a shipping container structure. We're also providing educational pieces. We've been doing that throughout this project, but we'll continue to do that as well. Just providing some guidance when considering uses that might require modification to the structure with respect to, say, engineering. And we'll see more of that supporting information roll out with the approval of the housekeeping project as well. So the slide before you here just summarizes the proposed requirements for shipping containers as it's outlined in the report, the attachments. And we've simplified things into one section of the bylaw so that the permissions are clear and they're dependent on if it's a temporary structure or a permanent structure. So temporary structure would be one that is attributed to moving or renovating. It's located on a property for a period of 1 month or less. Something that maybe someone puts in their driveway so that they can put the goods in it while they're getting their house ready to move. And we did hear that maybe the 4-month permission was a bit too long for that. So we're looking at shortening that to 1 month. And then beyond that, any shipping container structure that doesn't meet that criteria wants to be located on a property for longer than a month, it would be considered permanent. It would require a building permit application, just as any other structure that exceeds the 10 square meters or 108 square feet under the building code. And for these structures, there would also be requirements that relate to the character of the structure in relation to its surroundings. And that, as we know, kind of translates to the aesthetic as well. So this would be reviewed at the building permit level. The owner would be advised on the need to add, say, siding or cladding, maybe a roof structure or windows, have a man door. It's based on the type of property that it would be placed on and what the neighboring properties can accommodate with the structures of similar use. So as mentioned, we've worked with bylaw enforcement staff to ensure that the property standards bylaw will speak to this as well. And an update to that bylaw is forthcoming. And this will simply ensure, as I mentioned, that the requirements of both our bylaws support enforcement and as may be required or needed. And as we know, there's a lot of shipping container structures kind of scattered around the county, both in urban and rural settings. Many of those structures likely were not lawfully established. There's miscommunications about what is and isn't required to put those structures on a property. And so the proposed changes will make it easier for residents who may wish to seek conformity of those structures on their property, as well as for staff with respect to the review and enforcement. So we believe that the proposed approach, as with the other amendments proposed to the housekeeping project, will work to improve the overall function of the zoning bylaw for council, for staff, and for residents. So with that, I'd like to say thank you as well just to yourselves as council for your comments, and specifically on this project with respect to shipping containers and spreading the word with those on social media. So that's been immensely helpful while we've collected information. And at this time, I'll stop sharing my screen and then I'll turn it back over to Chairman Bell. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to address.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. That was very, very well done. You were breaking up a little bit. Your sound was breaking up just a touch. So just keep an eye on that. Questions for Brandon? I see Steve, then John, then Joe.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to Brandon. Thank you for all of that information, Brandon. My question is specific to the shipping container side of things, specifically the the character and appearance element. What is the anticipated timeline of when that criteria will be nailed down so that people can, and I think in you know, we've seen strong feelings for and against shipping containers, and I think the appearance and character issue is something that would help people be more comfortable with it. You know, in general, people don't want to be driving around the residential parts of the county and see what look like rusty shipping containers with womanized or steel or whatever, self-weathering steel everywhere. But what's the anticipated timeline for more details on that criteria that would fall under the property standard side of things?
Absolutely. Through Chair Bell to Councillor House. So I don't have a specific timeline right at this moment from our bylaw enforcement folks, but that is something I am following up with them on. But with respect to how we address the criteria that will be included in the property standards bylaw, what we're doing with the zoning bylaws is referencing the character. And with residential properties particularly, we recognize that a shipping container maybe doesn't have that character upfront, right? That is supportive for a residential area. So that will be made very clear to any applications that come in for building permit on those properties. That things like cladding or adding a man door or window may be required upfront. We're going to make that kind of communicated very quickly and upfront with folks, and we'll be working with our building division staff as well, just to make sure that interpretation of bylaw is consistent across the board. And then, as I said, with respect to the timeline for the property standards bylaw, just I think one definition we've discussed updating. So I suspect if that's the only update that we're doing with this regard, it would be done fairly timely.
Great. Thank you.
John Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Brandon. My question is regards to shipping containers as well. First of all, with the surveys that were done there, it's good to see the input we had from the public. And as you say, you know, the majority of the folks are in favor of them and don't have issues with them. So I think that's kind of telling us the direction we need to go there. A couple of questions I have. First off, you speak of potentially, you know, having to put cladding on them or a man door and that sort of thing. Is that going to be the only option? The reason I say that is because I've actually seen a few around that have been painted up nicely, so they're not all rusty, and they actually they go with the house, so it's not an eyesore or anything like that. And I'm hoping that sort of idea will be kind of wrapped in the envelope when we get this going as well, because I think if we were to have it so cladding is the only way to go, I don't think that would be right, because they can be made very nice without that. As far as the ones that want to, you know, that have them out there now that are unlawful, as we say, and they want to bring them in, they have to get a building permit for that. Can you just please let us know roughly what a building permit would cost for one of the shipping containers?
Thank you. Through Chair Bell to Councillor Pierce. I'm not sure of what it would cost, but that is definitely something I can follow up with our chief building official and report that back to the committee. There is a minimum charge for a building permit, and I don't suspect it would be much more than that. It depending on the size of the structure as well and the placement of the structure. But if they're using it, say, as a shed and it's just that singular structure, it likely wouldn't be not as near in cost, at least, as a rezoning for the property. So we're looking at that reduction to help out with the conformity issues.
Okay, I appreciate that. Follow up if I could, Mr. Chair. So you said there's a minimum. What is the minimum? Do you know? Just to give people an idea.
Through Chair Bell, if you give me 25 seconds here, I can pull it up for you. because I know they've recently changed with the new year as well. So I would hate to quote the wrong number.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. So I will note that, where is it here? Residential accessory buildings, for example, they do it per $1,000 in value, and it's $14 per $1,000 in value. So in that case, it'd be worth based on the value of the structure that they're placed on.
So, and my apologies, Mr. Chair. So I'm trying to understand the value of a shipping container, as opposed to the value of a built addition, so to speak.
And that too, I believe, that's something maybe the building division would be more familiar with, but I do know the minimum fee is $100 this year. We had bumped it up, I believe, by $10. It would be a minimum of $100.
Right. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon and John. Joan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Brandon. Brandon, I noticed in the housekeeping bylaw that there were a number of temporary uses that have expired. Are a lot of those granny or garden suites? And now that the government is permitted and the county is permitting ARUs, additional residential units, could those granny suites or garden suites be turned into additional residential units, particularly the ones that are expiring that are in this housekeeping bylaw?
Through Chair Bell to Councillor Gatward, that's a great question. And so part of the intention of putting the ARU requirements in place was to help relieve some of that need to go back for the temporary rezonings. So there are likely several of these that qualify for the requirements of the ARUs to be permitted on a permanent basis. And I know a number of them have reached out to the county and have worked on that already. And that is an option that we provide as staff to those folks. We let them know that their temporary rezoning is expiring, that we can consider the requirements for an ARU and evaluate it like that. That's one of the options we give them to move forward.
So if they met the requirements, if I may follow up, Mr. Chair, if they met the requirements for an ARU, then they don't have to go through permitting for an ARU because the structure's already there. How will that work?
Through Chair Bell to Councillor Gatward. So there are some requirements in place that may differ between just the type of structure that's there. That would be handled by our building division. But in most cases, as long as they've received a building permit, and it's gone through legally and been established that way, it's a simple conversion just to note that it's an ARU on the property, and then it's legalized that way.
Oh, okay. I'm glad to hear that it's been simplified. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Brandon? John Pierce.
If I could, second time, Mr. Chair, thank you. So, Brandon, if there's shipping containers out there right now that are in non-conformity, and let's say that bylaw has been called on them and there's been action taken, are those going to be paused, or, you know, what's going to happen to those if we're going through to potentially make it okay for them to be there and be able to bring them into conformity through grandfathering? Do we know what's happening with any potential open bylaw cases at this point?
Through Councillor Bell to Councillor Pierce, I would maybe defer that to I see that Ms. Sudama is on the call, or maybe one of the bylaw enforcement staff. It's my understanding, though, that usually enforcement takes place under the current regulatory approach and would move forward as such. But maybe Ms. Sudama could provide some more information if it's appropriate.
Good evening. Through you, Councillor Bell, to Councillor Pierce. You're correct, Councillor Pierce, in your assessment. Typically, the policy of the county has been to hold in advance any prosecution to permit compliance to occur. So the county's approach has always been to try and get people to comply with the existing regulatory scheme rather than looking to use any heavy-handed enforcement mechanisms. That's always the last resort. But what that means is if a prosecution is proceeding and someone doesn't take active steps to try and come into compliance, then the county's not going to wait indefinitely. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. If there are no further questions for Brandon, we're still in the public meeting space, so I'm going to open this matter up to the public. Alicia, is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to this item?
There is, Mr. Chairman. Douglas Stewart is here to speak on this item.
Douglas, welcome. Go ahead.
If I may, sir, and to the chair and members, what you would have received from me earlier is a written response. I will not go over that. You have that for your review. In a general perspective, my comments are situated that staff have been up front. They've expressed concerns and why the changes are being proposed. They certainly, I am not surprised in as much as that staff have been willing to provide information even before this report was prepared. I think that is tremendous. So I want to be upfront there. I also want to tell you I'm in the process of preparing a request for an additional residence. I have looked at what your policies are today, and we do not meet a few of those, and with the proposed changes, that would expand. I'm concerned with the proposed changes. Instead of being supportive, I find they're a restriction, and I think they go against the general principle which was originally established, was the province is encouraging additional residences, and they are so because we all know there's a housing shortage. There's a housing affordability, and the additional residence is one aspect that can make that easier. I want to express that I believe the changes aren't required. I don't think they're necessary, and that I wish to express the concern. I am here to inform you of that, to be upfront. I will be in the process of still making the formal request. I will still be responding to whatever the policies are in effect at the time. I believe that every application should be evaluated on its merit. I thank you for this point of time to express, and I'm here if anyone wishes to ask any question.
Thank you, Douglas. Does committee have any questions for clarification of Douglas? Joan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Stewart, did you request that your correspondence be included for tonight? Because I don't seem to have it. And I'm just wondering if it's coming forward at another time or whether it's just missing out of my package and everyone else got it.
So I submitted the correspondence, and I have seen that it's included on this committee's agenda addendum. So it is, so I did ask that it be presented, and I believe it is available.
In the addendum.
It is
That's
in the
why,
addendum.
that's why I don't have it. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
more than welcome.
If there are no further questions to Douglas, thank you, Douglas, for coming along and sharing your thoughts. Is there anybody else on the call that would like to speak to this issue?
I do not have anyone else on my list.
Thank you, Alicia. Then I'll call a third time of asking for in case anybody's on the call and hasn't registered with you. Seeing none, I'll close the public part of the meeting and pass the question back to committee for decision. John Pierce, are you moving the recommendation? Seconded by Steve Howes, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Motion carried, thank you. That brings us to the end of that section of the agenda. We have no consent items. We have one staff report from the Agricultural Advisory Committee. Would somebody like to move that we receive that? Steve, thank you. Joan, thank you. All those in favour? Received. We have no communications. I didn't get any other business. Is anybody would like to reflect on that? Ask for bring other business forward? No. There is no in-camera activity. At that point, then I'll adjourn the meeting until Tuesday, March the 1st. And thank you for bearing with us on this very long agenda and wish you all a good evening.
Very well done, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, well chaired.
Councillor McAlpine, check your email.
Sorry?
Councillor McAlpine, check your email details about tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Good night, all.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Alicia.